So, Mr. Mayor, may I report out of closed session?
Report
Thank you. So the City of Emeryville City Council and City of Emeryville as successor agency to the redevelopment agency met in closed session on the items listed on the closed session agenda. Regarding item 4.1.1, an update was provided. Regarding item 4.2.1, an update was provided and direction given. Regarding item 4.2.2, an update was provided. Regarding item 4.2.3, an update was provided. And regarding item 5.1.1, an update was provided. Thank you.
Okay, we're calling to order a special study session. Shall we do roll call?
Sure. Councilmember Martinez?
Here.
Councilmember Medina?
Here.
Councilmember Pats?
Here.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Here.
And Mayor Donahue.
Here. Approval of the study session final agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
After. I'm sorry. The motion.
Approval of final agenda.
Okay, so that
Bowders.
was moved by Vice Mayor Bowders and seconded by Councilmember Pats. Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Excuse me.
Martinez generally goes first.
I got rattled. Councilmember Martinez? Aye. Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Aye.
And Mayor Donahue.
Aye. Public comment for study session agenda items not on the agenda. Seeing none, let's start the study session.
Good evening, Mayor. Catherine Furpom, Housing Coordinator.
Could you use the microphone, please?
Didn't even see that. Sorry. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Catherine Furpom. I'm the Housing Coordinator with the Community Development Department. Today we're talking about 3600, 3610, and 3620 San Pablo Avenue. A background on this site: 3600 San Pablo was formerly a restaurant, Doug's Barbecue. It's currently vacant. 3610 San Pablo Avenue is leased to ECAP. 3620 San Pablo is, the front portion is leased to his locksmiths, and the back portion is used by the current owner. All the properties are for sale. The city commissioned an analysis to evaluate the various development options that could be done at this site, and staff is seeking direction for the city council on the preferred redevelopment alternative for the site. So the site is on the east side of San Pablo Avenue between 36th and 37th. It encompasses the three parcels I mentioned earlier. It's 0.39 acres total with on all three sites together. It's zoned mixed-use residential south. Supportive housing and transitional housing are conditionally permitted. Multi-use residential uses are permitted by right. The floor area ratio is 1.5 to 3.0 with a bonus. The height limits are 40 feet to 75 feet with the bonus. It's currently under a single private ownership. These are the three parcels. This is where it sits in the city. Just to the north of it is the 3706 San Pablo housing site, and to the south is Interstate 580. The City Council's goals, priorities, and strategies include the housing element, which include increasing affordable housing, providing housing for homeless, and to include supportive services for people experiencing homelessness. In the commission study, we looked at 5 development scenarios within 2 main objectives for the site, which are to add affordable housing units for the city and to include a space for ECAP to continue to provide services. So the first scenarios, scenario 1 and 2, are for 39 units of supportive housing for formerly people who had been experiencing homelessness. The ground floor includes an expanded ECAP space, other community services, and parking. Community services could include health clinic, employment, job training services, counseling services, a navigation center perhaps, or other services targeted to community members or homeless or low-income people. Community services space could also be added be additional area for ECAP to use if ECAP expands its services. The scenario 1 is a 9% tax credit, and scenario 2 is a 4% tax credit, but the same design. These two scenarios are, again, both supportive housing. The only difference is the type of tax credits that they would go for. Here is the drawings of the site. As you can see, there's a wraparound 36 along San Pablo, and then on 37th with a courtyard at the back. On the ground floor, ECAP would be on the 36th side. There's a little room, not very much, but some room for community services and the lobby and offices with the parking tucked back. Scenarios 3 and 4 are family housing, 39 units of housing for low-income families. The ground floors includes, in this scenario, expanded ECAP space and a parking garage with additional parking for the family housing. Residential units average 886 square feet per unit. And again, because the parking garage has to be larger to accommodate families, ECAP is the only use on the ground floor. Again, the only difference in these two scenarios is the 9%, is the funding source of 9% tax credits versus 4% tax credits. Again, if the units wrap around, there's a courtyard in the middle. As you can see in this scenario, ECAP would be on the corner of 37th with a lobby on San Pablo and all the parking taking up the middle of the site. Here are the two scenarios. Again, more parking, reduced ECAP space, some reduction in ECAP square footage, no other community services, and 35 bedrooms. So the scenario 5 is the same design as scenarios 3 and 4. However, it takes into account market rate units, a mixed income project, so 17 affordable and 18 market rate, has expanded ECAP space and this parking garage. So this is mostly, again, same design just to test the economics of including market rate units. So here are all 5 of the scenarios together. So some assumptions that were used in the financial feasibility with that the land cost would be approximately $2 million. It's not an appraisal. We're still working on this, working through what it would be to purchase the site. And the construction costs are based on costs of other similar projects. In scenario 1 and 2, service providers will not pay rent for the ground floor space, so the financial feasibility doesn't have any rent generated from the extra community space. And ECAP, the city currently pays ECAP's rent on this site for $63,000 annually. Rent and other services for ECAP. The project will need to fund an operating reserve of approximately $2.6 million to cover ongoing operating deficits, because housing for people who are formerly homeless does not generate enough rents to pay the operating costs for the actual building. So it always needs a big reserve up front to pay for those services ongoing. The financial sources would be 4% and 9% tax credits. There's some pluses and minuses to both of these, which I'm sure you're familiar with at this point. And other funding, state and county programs that might be available for funding this program, for funding this type of project. All fundings have a funding gap, so the project would not be able to be built without significant city subsidy. The cost of the space for ECAP and other community services increases the subsidy, because if you were to rent it out to commercial space, then you could actually have some capital, some funding to use
For operating costs.
to get that service.
Yeah.
Or operating costs, yes. So deep subsidies typically require for formerly homely projects. It's not unusual for deep subsidy to be required. So this is the population across the top in the 5 scenarios, the different types of tax credits, what we think the permanent sources of funding would be, and that's kind of based on funding that's available for different populations that are in the scenarios. The development costs are across the bottom. As you can see that the 9% tax credit would be less expensive. The most expensive scenario would be market rate family housing and scenario 4. So as you can see, there's a feasibility gap in the financing that's needed between $5 and $10 million for any of these scenarios. So the questions that we are here to answer, to get, is which of the development scenarios, supportive housing, family affordable housing, mixed income, family housing, would the City Council prefer on the site? And are there any other comments or considerations for staff regarding the potential redevelopment of the site?
Clarifying questions?
Yeah. Do you happen to know what is the rate of unmet need of the different populations this would serve? So, like, over the next 5 years, how many low-income families do we not have housing for versus how many homeless people do we not have housing for in Emeryville?
Well, Emeryville doesn't have a huge homeless population, but of course we have homeless people throughout the area who are looking for housing at any given time. So there's a great deal of need. And we actually, in our outreach provider who works with homeless people in Emeryville, isn't able, they do all the work and the case management, and then they get to a certain point and there's just no housing on the other side.
Yeah.
And that's obviously becoming a bigger and bigger problem regionally as well.
Do you know what is our homeless population in Emeryville?
So we did a homeless count. It's not public
recently,
yet.
Right? Okay.
So, but it's it's a 2-figure number. It's not over 100 people. So a lot of the homeless people in Emeryville actually live in vehicles, boats, RVs, and cars. So it's sort of a different population than what we see in other cities.
Right. I understand that it's difficult to count as well.
Yeah.
And what's the unmet need for low-income family housing?
In the city?
Yes.
Do that. Let's see. So 33% of Emeryville households are family households. However, this includes families without children and adult children. So I think what you're asking is family households with children.
Which would qualify for low-income housing.
Yes.
Essentially, yes.
So the number of family houses in Emeryville is growing. The absolute value rose 30% between 2010 and 2015. 11% of Emeryville households, or 663 households, have one or more people under the age of 18 in them. The average number of children in family households with children under 18 is 1.43 children. The problem with the data is that we don't have good data with income and children present. So we had to sort of find our way through, so bear with me, sorry.
Of course.
The majority of families in Emeryville with children are low income, or 381 families, we think, are low income. 61% of all extremely low income families have children under 18.
Yeah.
So that's 63% of extremely low-income families. So we have a need for housing, family housing, for extremely low-income families. 41% of all families with children under 18 are single-parent families. For low-income families, the share of single-parent raises to 62%. Emeryville currently has 478 below-market rate rental units, and that's a variety of incomes, so that's between 30 and 120%, with 2 to 4 bedroom units. That includes both San Pablo, 3706 San Pablo, and the market plate units.
What was that number of units that we have?
478
478.
below market rate rental units, between 30 and 120%, of income. Those are, and
2 to
those
4
are just
bedrooms.
rental.
But those don't necessarily
2
go
to
to
4
families.
bedrooms.
Yeah, 2 to 4, but they don't necessarily go to families.
Right, that's correct. For the most part, so, yeah, they go to families by the general term of families. But sometimes people are unrelated who live in those units, but it's not that normal. So where am I? So Emeryville has 449 low and moderate income families with children. So the number is 478 below market rate rental units with 2 to 4 units, 2 to 4 bedrooms in them. And again, as you mentioned, they don't always go to families. And we have 449 low and moderate income families with children. Some of those 449 are homeowners. Because again, we couldn't get income by tenure by children present. So, so some of the 449 low-income families with children present are actually homeowners. And, you know, some of them are in our home ownership BMR program. So these numbers aren't exactly parallel. Because some of the existing 2 and 3 bedroom units are occupied households without children, so with caregivers or householders with parents. So they're still families, they just might not be families with children. There continues to be a need for very low income and extremely low income family units. So, and some of the householders with children are also seniors who live with their grandchildren. So it's not always sort of a typical family unit. Is that everything?
Yeah, that helps.
Okay. Any other questions?
The smaller unit idea would have spaces, I guess it was at around 465 square feet. Has that been shown to be livable for more than one person on average, or not really? So those are considered to be one-person spaces.
Yes, normally it's a one-person, although that's pretty typical for one bedroom actually, and so two people can live in a one bedroom. I mean, we actually have quite a few 2-person households in smaller units in Emeryville, in our studio apartments. It's not uncommon for 2 people to be in a studio apartment that's smaller than 465 square feet.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this, we're interested in what the public has to say right now. Isn't that the case? That this is...
Hello. I think the site you might want to consider raising the height limit on this site, because I think 36, the one next to it, I think that's like 6 stories, right? Isn't that 3706 San Pablo? So you might want to consider just taking a look at the numbers and see how it would factor out if you increase the height and you get more housing that way. And you got to have a place for ECAP. I know there were many times when Nora tried to get rid of BCAP, and we were able to keep it, so thank you.
Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Adlai Kareem. I'm the current owner referred to there, and so I know a little bit about the property. What he said was very interesting. On there it said 75 feet plus. So since the city has the funds to do it, it could be up to 5 floors, and with creative parking you could increase the parking. Another aspect that the broker was telling me about is the 39 units could be expanded because it's in a transit hub, and you could reduce the parking by having, for example, bike parking and things like that. It's right on the main thoroughfare. So I think to think about only 39 units is not taking full advantage of the space. And I like the idea of the low-income family housing, and I had some conceptual ideas about a terraced unit that could go higher, take advantage of the direction of the sun, and maybe the family gardens could be on top, you know, on the height. Let's see, what else? Oh, it seems like you want to emphasize the ECAP center. But since this is like the gateway to Emeryville and the current zoning is for retail spaces on the ground floor, maybe you want to put the ECAP on the 37th Street side where then you'd have that, preserve that retail frontage on San Pablo Avenue. And also there was mention of some kind of artisan spaces, smaller commercial units. I know the locksmith loves that location, so I didn't see any mention of the retail spaces and the community services, which brings up another subject about if you want to encourage the homeless people, don't you want to encourage them to have something to do, something to work on, something that's going to make money so they can get out of that situation? So why not have some, like, you know, educational workshops where they can learn how to do something, rebuild something, you know, take classes, you know, develop skills and stuff. So if the city has the funds, this could be a very expansive project, more than the short-sighted thing that was presented there. I mean, they're not taking full advantage of the resources of the city for, like, the gateway to your city, you know? So that's why I thought you guys would be the perfect customer for this property, because I don't have the funding to pursue a development project like that. But if a very creative architect or someone that's worked with the city before could take full advantage of that space, you know? You know, me and my broker have done extensive research, and I think you've undervalued the property value. There's properties that are closer to MacArthur BART, right there at MLK and MacArthur BART, where they've already outlined, they got the plans for units, they've taken advantage of the transit hub, the proximity of the BART station and stuff, and they've outlined a bigger project.
Thank you. We have 3-minute time limit, and you've used up your 3 minutes, but thank you. That was helpful.
And just one quick thought. If near the BART station, there's a project that's just completed where they took shipping containers and stacked them, and I think it was a very creative use of the property and its proximity to the BART station. And on the ground floor, they have little retail shops there. So I think you could, you know, take advantage of the space, you know, more creatively
Thank you very
more
much.
expansively. You know, like you said, if you build a steel foundation, you can get 5 floors, right?
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak to this subject? Well, let's have some thoughts from the council. What are people thinking?
I'm not afraid to go, but I have a lot to say, so I'm just curious if others have things they want to open with or.
Well, I was just
thoughts?
looking at the cost to the city for those scenarios was pretty expensive per unit, and we're currently doing pretty well in some of our other developments where our affordable housing is included in the basic development. And so this, from a city point of view, the way this was presented just looks very expensive per unit for low, you know, affordable housing. So that's my first take on it, that maybe there's some other possible uses of the site.
So I'll open responding to that, but I'll make it transparent at the beginning that I strongly support scenario 1. Scenario 2 as the alternative for me, but I think there's a lot of things. The staff presentation on this was very introductory, which is what it's supposed to be, I think. But I'm appreciative to staff. I know my first day as council, I sat down with the city manager to talk about this very issue in this very location. And so I'm very grateful to staff for putting these scenarios in this presentation today. And what isn't captured in here, there's a lot of things that aren't captured in here, and I want to take a step back first from the dollars and the numbers to talk about who this is serving and what the different ways to quantify the benefits of that might be. So to Allie's question, I don't think we should examine how many people are homeless or how many families are homeless in Emeryville. Homelessness is a regional and state problem, and I know you know that. But there are 6,200 people a day in Alameda County who experience homelessness, and that is a HUD figure that does not include people who couch surf, people who are doubled up with families and children. So a lot of Latino and Vietnamese families, for example, where there are 3 to 4 families living inside a single unit, are not captured by this figure. To give you a comparison, 6 other western states don't have as many homeless individuals as the entire county of Alameda. The problem is immense. And this is a population of people for whom we have neglected the real solution, in my opinion, for a very long time. I spent close to a decade as an attorney and an outreach worker for the homeless, and I can tell you that supportive housing is by far and away the clearest answer to a solution. We had a meeting at the county level this past week. The County Board of Supervisors held a joint special meeting of the Health and Social Services Committees to discuss the county approach to homelessness. And the county is investing in a coordinated entry system, which is the right thing to do. The coordinated entry system, I won't go into giving a presentation tonight on homeless systems, but the back end of it is that people who get served by a coordinated entry system where there's no wrong door to getting services and are assessed for the best appropriate intervention, one of those outputs needs to be permanent supportive housing. It is the only intervention that has been shown to demonstrably work to end homelessness for the people we see day in and day out on the street. We call them high barrier individuals. They are people who have chronic mental health issues. They suffer from long-term addiction problems. They have, almost in every situation I've ever experienced trauma in their life, many of them dating back to their childhood. They are not serviced in many cases by their families. They live alone. And this is a population, many of them have criminal records because we've criminalized homelessness for 35 years, and many of them are high barrier to getting other types of housing. And we don't build enough supportive housing. And yes, it costs a little more on the front end than other types of housing, but what no government actors have ever had the courage to do, which is what I implore this council to consider, is that there are savings that come from building permanent supportive housing. And it's sometimes hard to capture that in a meaningful way. But what I did was I took a look at a recent report that the Corporation for Supportive Housing, which is a national leader on this issue, and a partner of mine for many years, put out on this. In studies that they did in New York State where they created permanent supportive housing and studied it, the number of emergency room visits for the people in the year before to the year after declined by 57%. The use of detox services declined by 87%. The rate of incarceration by over 50%. And more than 83% of people remain permanently stably housed for after 12 months. And those are outcomes that yield savings to our community in other ways. That is a decrease in the time spent by police officers on the street intervening with people who have quality of life types of infractions. That is a decrease in the amount of time you and I wait in the emergency room and the cost of our insurance for the uninsured, which we have the ACA now, but for the amount of time that doctors spend dealing with people who deal with very common illnesses, very common problems, infections, eating food from trash cans. Those are all preventable types of healthcare interventions that with permanent supportive housing get prevented. Permanent supportive housing involves wraparound social services in housing. It involves having case management, drug addiction services, counselors, therapists in the housing, which is what makes, to Catherine's point about the gap financing for operations, the biggest challenge for these types of programs is that HUD for years has funded the capital to build these programs, and they do not fund the services at an equal level. And so cities and the permanent supportive housing builders are always left trying to figure out how do we close that gap. And I'm happy that the county is having a conversation about this. And last week when I was at the county hearing, I went up and I asked the county to consider providing funding to cities willing to build this type of housing, to either purchase the land that could be used for it, to help pay for the services to close gap financing for cities that don't have $5 million or $10 million laying around to do that. And the county is going to continue that conversation next week and going forward, and we're looking for a solution to this, but it has to be a regional solution. It involves so many different agencies in the county. And so for me, Unit sizes, we've put up what are the traditional unit sizes when we think of families, when we think of individuals. Studios we've built that are going for $3,600 a month, but you can build housing for people who are homeless, and for somebody who's lived in a tent under a bridge. Not that it should be okay with us to accept that they can't have the same quality of life or the same lifestyle as us. Many people are so grateful to have even a 200 square foot space that has a cooktop and a small refrigerator and a bed, because it's warm, it's sheltered, they have access to services. There are ways to put more people onto a site like this than what has been put out there tonight. I have seen the micropads, which are container-looking structures that are very small. They include an efficiency bathroom, an efficiency kitchen space, a micro closet, and a bed. But they come in pairs of 2, and a site like this could easily have 100 of these. I'm not suggesting that's the answer, but I wanted to address the flexibility of design with permanent supportive housing is very real. There are many creative nonprofits and other entities that are out building things that are looking to meet the demand that exists today for people who need solutions today. They needed them yesterday, and we aren't solving our problem by continuing to look at other groups. And so many affordable housing programs, most people don't know this, and this isn't to mean speak affordable housing developers, but they get to select which people move in. And they do use barriers. They do not allow people with certain types of records. They do not allow people who have certain types of issues at times. And you don't go to an affordable housing building and see people who have the chronic illnesses and issues that you see currently if you walk under the 580 freeway. And so I come from a very personal and professional background with this issue, and so this opportunity is extraordinary to me, and I know that there are 5 really good people up here who want all these options are good, but I would just ask us if there's any interest in this to do this. To the comments that were made about ECAP skills and classes, ECAP absolutely should be a part of this. I envision a full kitchen, a place where people don't stand in the sun or the rain to get food, where they get a hot meal and they can take a number like at a deli and be treated civilly like human beings and not embarrassed on a sidewalk. And I'm going to stop.
Go ahead, please.
I'm impressed 2 people want to follow that. So, to summarize what my colleague just said, we can be a pay now city or we can be a pay later city. And I often struggle with this. People focus in on the cost, Mayor Donahue, and yes, the costs are high, but we all know what the outcomes are if we don't pay it. And that's where I draw the line on this. I'm embarrassed that we live in a town, in a state, I should say, where Salt Lake City is leading the way on housing first. And you're shaking your head at me.
No, it's completely true. You're right.
Yeah,
they are.
no.
They are a model for the country.
And so when I look at this, yes, I look at the bottom line, and logic would dictate that, oh yeah, we can't afford this. But I can tell you, living in this town for as long as I have, and probably one of the only people here to ever eat at Doug's, because it's been closed for a while.
No, I ate at Doug's.
You ate at Doug's? All right. It just kills me that it sits there empty while people are in line for ECAP. And, there's this argument always that what do we as a city pay for? We wouldn't be having this cost discussion if we were paying for the military, but for some reason we're going to balance the budget on food stamps. And it's the same thing in cities. We can talk about paying for the police, but we always want to balance our budget on the small pieces, and to me this is one of the small pieces. Yes, $6 million in the funding gap for scenario 1 is a lot of money. It goes up to $11 million if we only get the 4%. But I just say to myself, what kind of city do we want to be? We talk about building an arts center, we talk about, the transit center, and we talk about these things being a retail juggernaut in the area. But you know what? Why aren't we known for being the city that's looking out for the homeless first and for feeding things. And so maybe I'm not as detail-oriented and eloquent as Member Bowders, but I wholeheartedly support scenario 1. This is the kind of city that I want to live in. And just to address people, this is my neighborhood, not just my city. I live a couple of blocks from ECAP. I bicycle past it or take the bus past it on my way to work most days. This is my neighborhood, my town. This is what I want. And you know what? I'm going to look at staff and say, make the money work. Find us a way to get there. Because this is what we as a city council should prioritize. And thank you.
Thank you, Christian.
So I just want to say I love that we're having this conversation. I love sitting on this council with you folks, and I also am supportive of scenario 1 for the reasons that my colleagues have outlined. I have a lot of faith and credence in what you've said, especially Vice Mayor Bowders, as he mentioned. He's been an advocate for low-income folks and folks who are experiencing homelessness for many years, as well as a policy director in the realm of affordable housing. And I was aware of the meeting that you went to, the special meeting on April 24th of the Health and Social Services at the county level. I understand it was a 6-hour meeting, and thank you for what you do in the daytime. But it obviously shows your wealth of knowledge and experience in this area. And I know that you're committed to finding solutions for this on a regional level. So I really appreciate not only your opinion, Member Pats, but as someone who's really been in deep with this policy for a long time and understand how to get the best bang for your buck, because I know you're also a budget person.
Yes, thank you.
So, you know, you have to ride that line to understand, yeah, as Member Pats so aptly said, you pay now or you pay later. So you have all of the background to understand that, and because of that, I have full faith that scenario 1 is the right way to go.
I would say I really liked what Christian said about, giving full credence to staff to find the money. I think we should also look to ourselves. I mean, John literally does this as his day job, and I know you're going to come out swinging looking for this. And I will commit to, if we move forward with scenario 1, working with you to lobby aggressively actors in the county, because you're right, this is a regional issue. And I was trying to find out what our specific needs were in Emeryville, but I bet we're going to be servicing surrounding communities as well. And therefore, we should get some funding from surrounding communities. And I think we need to, as a council, if we're going to, take a significant step forward off a cliff with our budget, we need to commit to us figuring it out. And I'm very much willing for something like this, for something that could have a massive impact and really serve as a model to work hard with you on it.
Well, Vice Mayor Bowders and I are going to a meeting on May 10th with the county about this issue. And I think maybe we should come prepared to look at it as cost-effective in the long run, and that we are determined to do our fair share. And if we're going to take this on, and we might be the first in the Center Bay to do that, I think the surrounding cities would be pleased to get on board with this in some manner. If it pays in the long run, the savings to the Alameda County medical system could be the difference.
Which is about to be severely overburdened with the imminent closure of debates.
So there's a chance we could cut a regional Center Bay deal about this, that all the surrounding cities would realize that we could pool our monies and make it work. So I'm open to that, and I look forward to going to that meeting.
Mayor, may I say just a couple other things? So first, I want to thank everybody up here for supporting scenario 1, and I think it's the right direction, and for all the very good reasons that all these members have said, I think that's the direction that hopefully staff is taking from this. Housing is healthcare. I've found people frozen to death under bridges. There's no substitute.
It's public safety, too.
We just had a fire. To clarify what Member Bowders just said, though, it's scenario 1 or scenario 1 and 2?
I mean, 1 is preferable, but 1 is a competitive tax credit program, and 2 is basically there's no limit on 4% tax credits, and so I mean, I'll defer to Catherine, but it would be ideal to get number 1, but whoever we would pick would have to be
Right.
competitive for that.
Yeah, so there would be a competitive process, an RFP that went out,
Yeah.
and we would get proposals. But as you're aware, sometimes things change during the design development, and so the 9% or the 4% would really be depending on what the situation at the time and what the other funding sources were that they could get. Generally, what happens is projects go for 9%. If they don't get it, then they try and go for the 4%. So generally, initially, the first push is for 9% credits.
Yeah. And the only other thing to Mayor Donohue's point about this being a regional and Center Bay and moving forward, at the meeting last week, other cities talked about what they were doing, and I've had meetings with individual council members from neighboring cities about this issue, both before I was on the council and since, as well as the county supervisors. And the coordinated entry system model essentially is designed to ensure that any person who is reached through outreach, who comes into certain target service providers, gets filtered into a system whereby best practices happen. So coordinated entry means that if I came into a shelter today and I get referred to Scott's food stamp office and Allie's DMV office and Diane's social security office, I don't have to retell my story. I don't have to find transportation. I don't have to work without income or a phone. I can get access to all services through a coordinated entry point. And truthfully, the best practice is to co-locate those services in a way where people get served with everything they need at one time. And other cities that have higher concentrations to the questions that were asked, where people are more immediately there today, those are better venues, just as they are today, for those types of services. But this site is in particular an ideal site because it's on a very highly used transit corridor that connects to all those services in Oakland and Berkeley that would be partner services for people who would move into a structure like this. And so this site, one of the reasons I asked that we really consider permanent supportive housing at this site is because it has a locus with things that people need to succeed. And I just want to share one story. I had a family I assisted once. It was a mother and 2 kids, and she was recovering from heroin. And we put her in a methadone program. About a year later, we got her into a job skills training program. After about 3 years of working with her, I got a Christmas card, and she was approved for a Habitat home. She has a job. She has 2 kids. They're good in school. And they have their own home. So I know this works. I know this works.
Okay, I don't see any further discussion.
Thank you.
Ooh, right on time.
Yeah, we have 3 minutes.
All right, so now,
Just have to wait 3 minutes.
already changing the existing zoning, right? Mixed use, commercial and residential to almost purely residential with nothing coming in as income. So, you know, maybe you could have some of the units be rent paying so you could, make it worthwhile. It wouldn't be as cost effective. But, I mean, if you have sources of income from that.
Still exists in a few months.
Yeah, I mean, when she said there wasn't that much
I feel like everything we do has an asterisk next to it right now.
and all along
For work and for this, like 90% of my day just has a big asterisk.
Okay, we're going to get started here.
But my impression was that the city had a certain plan for the zoning.
Okay, this is the beginning of the successor agency
On the ground floor.
meeting. Thank you. I don't think we need to do roll call.
No,
So,
all still here.
public comment for the consent agenda or items not on the agenda for the successor agency. All right, seeing none, any ex parte communication about this agenda?
Nope.
All right,
Move the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Bowder, seconded by Councilmember Martinez. Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Aye.
And Mayor Donahue.
aye. Okay, now we're going on to the regular city council meeting.
I, Diane Martinez, solemnly pledge that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California as I discharge my duties as a city council member for the city of Emeryville. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
I think we're getting better.
Yeah?
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the final agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Oh, wait a second.
Second.
I thought I had it. Sorry, I might have a comment on that. I'm on the wrong agenda.
The green one.
Yeah, I'm trying to go to my I legislate one so I can, because I put a note on it if I did. Oh, no, I don't. I'm sorry. No, I don't have any comments on that.
All right, then moved by Councilmember Pat, seconded by Councilmember Medina to approve the final agenda. Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Aye.
And Mayor Donahue.
Aye. We have some special orders of the day here. Oh, excuse me. .1 Proclamation of the City of Emeryville proclaiming the month of May as Older Americans Month in the City of Emeryville. Okay, now this is Older Americans Month 2017. Age out loud. Whereas the City of Emeryville includes older Americans who richly contribute to our community, and whereas we acknowledge that what it means to age has changed for the better, and whereas the City of Emeryville is committed to supporting older adults as they take charge of their health explore new opportunities and activities, and focus on independence. And whereas the City of Emeryville can provide opportunities to enrich the lives of individuals of all ages by involving older adults in the redefinition of aging in our community, promoting home and community-based services that support independent living, encouraging older adults to speak up for themselves and others, and providing opportunities for older adults to share their experiences. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Scott Donahue, on behalf of the City of Emeryville and an older adult, do hereby proclaim May 2017 to be Older Americans Month. I urge every resident to take time during this month to acknowledge older adults and the people who serve them as influential and vital parts of our community. Proclaimed the second day of May 2017.
Hooray.
Here, here.
And we acknowledge
We
you, Scott.
appreciate all of the older adults who are in the room today. We have a standing ovation for Mr. Carpio.
We have another proclamation here.
Millennial Month.
4.2, proclamation of the City of Emeryville, of the City Council of the City of Emeryville, recognizing the week of May 11th to May 21st, 2017, as the 21st Annual East Bay Affordable Housing Week. Together for Housing Justice. Whereas quality, affordable housing is the foundation for health, economic stability, and educational opportunity. And whereas affordable homes are a solution to homelessness and provide support to seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities. And whereas development of affordable homes close to public transit and jobs will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and strengthen the economy by providing low-income families better access to opportunities and urban amenities. And whereas rising housing costs and economic factors have led to increasing displacement, overcrowding, and homelessness that threatens our region's diversity and economic prosperity. And whereas nonprofit organizations, local jurisdictions, community organizations, and many others continue to respond to this need by providing homes and shelter for low-income people and those with special needs. And whereas East Bay Housing Organizations, EBHO, is celebrating its 33rd anniversary and the collective work of its 350 members to solve the affordable housing crisis and stabilize communities. And whereas EBHO has organized Affordable Housing Week for 21 years, and in its 33rd year anniversary will feature 23 events acknowledging the need for and the contributions of affordable housing. Now, therefore, be proclaimed that I, Scott Donahue, Mayor of the City of Emeryville, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of May 11th to May 21st as the 21st Annual Affordable Housing Week in the City of Emeryville. And be it further proclaimed that the city will work collaboratively to secure sustainable funding and support for affordable housing at the local, regional, and state levels, and will encourage residents of Emeryville to participate in Affordable Housing Week activity. Proclaimed the second day of May, 2017.
And Catherine is here to accept that and make some brief remarks.
Thank you. The City of Emeryville has a membership with EBHO, and our commitment to providing affordable housing for low-income individual and families has been noted, and EBHO appreciates the proclamation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Announcement of commission and committee vacancies.
So at your next meeting on May 16th, you will appoint for 3 unexpected vacancies, one on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, one on Parks and Rec, and one on Public Art. But then we currently have a recruitment open that closes on June 5th for our big turnover of terms that expire on June 30th. So you'll, at your June 20th meeting, you will have several people that have either been are new appointees or incumbents that are going to apply. And so there will be at that time and up until June 5th opportunities for citizens to apply for all of our different committees and commissions, because many of the terms expire at the end of June in 2017. So everybody please apply. The online application is very easy. If you have applied within the last year, or if you're an incumbent, we've made it so that you don't have to fill out a whole new application online, but you can simply click on a button that says you have applied before and we have your application on file, and that keeps you from having to fill in all the fields again. So everybody go online and apply. Thank you.
Council member special announcements.
I have 2. Just wanted to remind everyone about the Small Business Forum. There'll be a meet and greet from noon to 1, and then the Planning Commission and the City Council will convene jointly at the ECCL. Help me, is it building A or C?
I believe it's A, the multi-use,
The one at
the large
53rd,
multi-use
right?
room.
Yeah, so we'll be meeting there. That's an opportunity for the public, small businesses in town that have been in town or want to come to town to come. There'll be a facilitator. I know staff is working really well to have some speakers come from the Small Business Development Association and other places, and I think it will be a great opportunity to tell us about economic development for small business in Emeryville. The second thing I just want to provide an announcement about, as opposed to reporting on this at the end as a meeting attended, I just want to let everyone know that the Alameda County Transportation Commission voted last week. We do a 2-year capital improvement plan, county-wide, for transportation projects, and I'm happy to report that everything Emeryville submitted was funded. Wow. I want to thank staff for all their work on this. I want to thank Councilmember Medina for working very closely with me on transportation issues in the county, and I just want to report out that the 8 to Go received funding, which is a senior paratransit service. The Emeryville Hollis Street preservation is still in the plan. South Bayfront Bridge received $2 million of contingency funds to ensure that it was funded through construction. Bay Area bike share expansion to Emeryville has money. Emery-Go-Round general benefit operations of $500,000 a year for the next 5 years will come to the city. Frontage Road will get a slurry seal at Powell and 65th Streets. And we have been funded to complete our study and implement the North Hollis Parking and Transportation Demand Management Program. The next 2-year cycle, bids for that will begin in the fall of or summer to fall of 2018, with the next set of awards to be in 2019. So we look forward to working with BPAC and Transportation Committee, as well as the Planning Department and Public Works for new proposals to bring forward to help us leverage funding. Thank you.
I have an announcement. On Thursday, it is Emeryville's annual Bike to Work Day and Community Ride. Community Ride at 8 a.m. Thursday, May 11th, starting at City Hall. And there will be Arizmendi Pizza.
I went to a ribbon cutting today at the end of the Bay Bridge pedestrian bicycle trail out on Yerba Buena Island. And there were a lot of happy cyclists. And the representatives, the mayor of Oakland was there, and the new transit person they've hired, and the Jane Kim, the supervisor representing that part of downtown San Francisco. Bijan Sartipi, the District 4 leader for Caltrans, was there. The East Bay Parks director and representatives were all there, and everyone is excited about this path out to Yerba Buena Island that also happens to come through Emeryville. And I mentioned to Mr. Sartipi about the connection possibilities for a bicycle pedestrian bridge at Temescal Creek. He's all ears. He's looking forward to receiving these documents and our study showing how it's entirely possible for us to have this. East Shore Park and East Bay Parks were very excited about this because they have some serious cyclists in their management, and they are familiar with our connection problem out to the bridge, and that we are a regional connector from all the Bay Trail coming from the north that will eventually be going to San Francisco. So there is a regional need that could support paying for this new potential bridge that could be built over 80, a bicycle pedestrian bridge, that we could, according to Bike East Bay, get regional BB money to build this. So I think that we have another amenity that we can look forward to having that'll improve connectivity in our city. Any other announcements? Okay, public comment for consent agenda or items not on the agenda.
Good evening again. Just want to briefly mention that there's going to be a General Assembly at ABAG on June 5th. And, they're talking about a merger, but there really is no intention on MTC's part to ever merge. So what's going to happen is ABAG is going to lose all their staff on July 1st. They won't have any staff, and it's pretty sad, really. ABAG performs certain statutory things that are required, and the money comes through MTC as the MPO. And so MTC decided they would stop funding ABAG, and they really don't have the right to do that because only ABAG can perform those services. But the board got really panicked, and gee, we're going to lose ABAG, and really they should have just, because if they didn't fund ABAG, then the regional planning would have to stop because MTC doesn't have the authority to carry out those tasks. So at the last meeting, the employees that work for ABAG really don't want to work for MTC, and they want SEIU to represent them, and MTC doesn't really want SEIU, so it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But, so MTC is just going to have all the control. They control all the money, the staff controls all the money, and, it's the only region in the whole United States where the regional COG doesn't control the funds. And so I don't know how it's ever going to turn around. I've been working on this for 25 years, and I don't think I'm going to live long enough to see that thing turn around. But the only thing the cities can do is not approve the budget, because the budget being considered as a new consolidated budget with a consolidated staff. They didn't give the cities the opportunity to vote on the contract of services or the memorandum of understanding. So the only attorney ABAG will have will be the MTC attorney. And it's kind of funny because when they were talking about picking the executive director, she says, well, ABAG has no standing to vote on the executive director. So you're really not going to have it's really bad for small cities. So anyway, I would urge you to vote against the budget, but thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask him a question?
Yes.
Ken, could you come back? I'm the delegate to ABAG. I'll be at the meeting. Have you spoken to any delegates from any other cities who have told you that they're going to vote no on this budget?
I don't know exactly how the other cities are going to vote. I'm writing a paper about it, and then I'll find out. So before you have the vote, I can give you...
Sure, okay.
Because I don't expect you to stand alone. I mean, that's not going to work either.
Well, I'm just curious. I haven't heard anyone else proposing to deny the budget, so I just wanted to hear if...
Well, the attitude basically is that people have acquiesced to the idea, well, let's try this and see if it works. But in order to merge, they would have to give up their power. And the staff is never going to give up their power, believe me. I can say that for sure. And so it's almost like a hoax. They're going to look at governance 3 years later but there won't be anything left of ABAG after that. So thanks.
Okay.
Any other? Mr. Carpio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is André Carpio, And tonight I want to entertain you in something that is new. Not new in a sense of technology, but something that is new, that should be new in a construction of building. And I'm talking about an area that has been neglected. Not only that, has been sabotaged. I don't see any building that has been made that have any aerodynamics set up. Everything is square, angle, and this creates tremendous amount of turbulence. This turbulence has an effect, I don't want to call it on climate change, but it has an effect on the movement of the wind, of the mass, especially is close to the sea level, where the density of the wind is the highest. And because of that, not only it breaks down the wind, but it breaks down the direction. For instance, the wind going through a tree is like going through a filter. The tree is a mass, it's a front mass, but the wind still go through. Like a building, there's no way. The wind has to go around. And I don't want to see that the earth is being pushed around. But what we have here is that with the new development, everything that used to be grass and ground is now covered with cement, asphalt, whatever. And when it rains, so the water is collected and poured directly in waterway and in the sea. So what it used to be is that all this area used to be green, and being green, it absorbed the water, the rain, and with the evaporation made a heat transfer and cool automatically. So what we experience here is that the climate change, if you want to call it like that, is that we have changed the evaporation system which draw heat from the atmosphere, and automatically we have a warm up, and that's not the cause of the cars or the pollution or something like that. It's just that we are overcover the earth surface, great area with something that does not absorb the water anymore, subject to evaporation. And this is a grave environmental handicap. And also I would like to call that we review all the aesthetic of the building so that we have some direction into the aerodynamics for the wind transfer and the wind movement around the earth. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes. Could I say something about the bike? Yeah, when they were rebuilding the Bay Bridge there, I thought they were going to continue that bicycle path all the way to the city. And I was kind of taken aback that they didn't find enough funding to build a little auxiliary suspension bridge off the main bridge. You know, how much is that going to cost compared to what they spent for all the cars going across the bridge? And you mentioned something in your thing that the regional park people were there, but the regional park people don't have an interest in public bicycles as public transportation. I know from my experience at Temescal Creek, there's a path that's within the ebb mud lands, and they don't support it after 10 p.m. They give you a criminal curfew violation for it if you go through that designated path, and it's been overlooked because this was Caltrans property. It was ceded back to Oakland. I mean, it was ceded to the Park District. It should have been ceded back to Oakland because it's marked as a bike route, and they don't give an easement for the thing. I know it's not the city of Emeryville, but it just shows you that these are regional problems. You were talking about that earlier, that they're regional problems, and they don't just stop at the city line. You know, if people want to go to San Francisco, you know, that path is great for the daytime, but you can't go across the bridge, and there's a 10 p.m. curfew on it, you know, so you can't really even enjoy Treasure Island at night or something, you know. So, and they always say, oh, there's safety concerns, and it's like, well, I'm willing to deal with, you know, my personal safety on my own, you know. I just want to have a safe route, you know. And this is supposed to be guaranteed, you know, in the state mandate for highways. If there's not an alternative route, you're supposed to provide one. In the old days, you could go to the toll plaza and take a tow truck across the bridge. They would be obligated to do that on the San Rafael Bridge and other places like that. And it seems like, they build these bridges, but they don't really plan for the people who want to ride bikes there. And not that many people are going to go 14 miles to San Francisco or whatever it is, but some people would, And if you ever try to take a taxi late at night from San Francisco, it's going to cost you $25, $30, right? And, if you're used to riding bikes, 14 miles isn't really that big of a deal. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in there, since you mentioned it.
Well, I'm here tonight to happily report, Emeryville has progressed. We've gotten more fair, more equitable as a city, because starting, and less racist, because starting in March, the March crime report, the crime stats, police blotter, released by the chief of police, for the first time since we've had our new chief of police, doesn't include racist stereotyping. I've watched, and every month we've had our new chief, she's engaged in this racist stereotyping against black people. I've been, as you know, I have been alerting you to this, and apparently the chief wanted to keep on going on with her racist stereotyping using our website to do that. However, somebody must have spoken to her, I'm thinking, because if you look at the March, I guess it's the March police blotters released in April, you'll see no more racist stereotyping. And so we have gotten better. So if any of the 5 of you are responsible for that, or all of the 5 of you, I'd like to say thank you, because it really reflected badly on us. And it gave me the creeps that, my city is engaging in racist stereotyping. So now I feel better about my town now. So thank you. Insofar that any of the 5 of you helped in that regard, I'd like to say thank you. Now I want to bring up another point that's a little, maybe not quite as disturbing as the racist stereotyping, but it's bad. And that's the city manager, Carolyn Lair. I just got an email from her today where she's telling me she doesn't want to hear my opinions about my concerns about the city, about how the city is run. And she wants me to stop emailing her because I've been critical of her and her ideas and her policy prescriptions. And so I guess she doesn't want to hear criticism. Praise, that's okay, but criticism is not something she wants to hear. And so she told me to cease and desist, no more writing to her or anybody in the staff, the entire staff, any of my ideas about how we can make our town a better place. But if you go back and you look at the job description of the city manager when you put that job out for bid, it's really clear in there that listening to the public is part and parcel of being a city manager here in Emeryville. The city manager is supposed to listen to the public. So I don't think the city manager is breaking any laws by trying to forbid me from emailing her or anybody on the staff, but it certainly goes against her job description. Thanks.
Okay, any other public comments? City manager report.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick note, and that is that I had made an inquiry with Alameda County Fire Chief Winokur this evening about any updates that we have about the fire last night, the very unfortunate fire that took place under the 580 overpass. And we didn't get too much information gathered, but that the fire was entirely located within the city of Oakland, and our Emeryville Fire Station 35 did respond. However, that response was canceled shortly before they arrived, so apparently Oakland had it well under control. So if we get a little bit more information, perhaps next meeting we can put that out. But thank you.
Thank you. Ex parte communications.
None.
None.
Okay, consent items.
I just have a question on one item. Does anyone else?
I do as well, but it might be the same item. Which one?
10.8?
10.8. Hold on, I'm scrolling. No, I was going to ask about 10.81 and 8.2.
Okay, I was going to ask about 10.82 and 8.3, so why don't you go first?
Oh, sorry, 8.2 and 8.3. That was right. Yeah, exact same one.
Oh, well, maybe we have the same question. Go ahead.
Oh, I was hoping maybe Maurice can let us know a quick summary of why the cost is going up about $67,000 to 2 contractors. I saw that there were maybe some new improvements being made as well.
For which project? I'm sorry?
For
Safe routes.
Safe routes to
Safe
school.
Routes.
So primarily, we added some scope that wasn't a part of the grant project. In particular, we wanted to take care of the detectable warnings on the handicap ramps that were deficient, and so it was the best time to do that work with that project. But the most significant change that we had was while we were putting in all the bases for the new flashing beacon and the speed indicator signs, we uncovered all the foundations for the old streetlight system that was there. So we weren't able to really excavate those holes very efficiently. The contractor wasn't. And so there was a lot of extra time that they spent to deal with that concrete that was unforeseen in the project area.
Okay.
So my question is just, I noticed that in the contract 10.8.2 with Redwood Engineering, we made these change orders that increased, to Councilmember Medina's question, increased that cost to them. And there was a $7,200 credit we got that was part of a liquidated damages clause, and I just want to check how that relates to, and that was due to them not completing the project on time. And then I look at 10.8.3, and the reason given in the staff report for the additional $14,000 is due to having to manage the project longer because it didn't complete on time. So can you just explain how those relate?
Sure. So the additional work added to the days of the contract. So there was a certain amount of working days for the contractor, and that coincided with the number of days our construction management firm gave us their bid for performing the construction management of the project. So as a result of the extra work, the project took longer. Some of the work, some of the extended time was due to the contractor. For example, at the very beginning of the project, they're supposed to put an order for all the materials that would need to be extended time to deliver. For example, all the signal poles would take so long to order. Well, there were a few poles that they missed. So they came with all their materials to install it, and they realized that they didn't have all the materials. That kind of pushed the project duration out longer than anticipated. While that was going on, they were dealing with unforeseen issues with the extra footings that were encountered. But then also we had to track time for the shoddy work they did on those crosswalks. So in the end, we were able to dock their total extra work by $7,200, which in effect is the amount equivalent to what it was supposed to cost us to run the job for that extended period of time that was at their fault. And there's a formula in our contract documents that says how much we can charge for liquidated damages, and we use that formula to determine the amount.
And that formula includes paying Park Engineering for the contract management fee that
it's supposed to cover our overhead for managing the job. And so with this project, we weren't doing it in-house. We contracted it out because we had other projects underway. So we used an outside firm to run the job, and primarily most of that was covered under the grant project that we received. Most of that contract cost was for the construction management.
Okay, I have no more questions.
Thanks, Maurice.
Okay, do I have a motion?
A comment on 8.2?
Well,
We're on item 10, which is the consent items, and we already had public comment for consent.
Yeah.
New information was just relayed that I'd like to comment.
Okay, fine, come up if you have new information about that.
Okay, regarding the discussion that was just had what we're talking about is Redwood Engineering Construction Incorporated. This is the firm that delivered to us a unusable bike ped path to the Bay Trail extension along Christie. It's unusable because it's so wavy. So I think what we should do is not pay them anymore and apply that money to the cost we're going to have to incur to fix that so bicyclists can ride on it. I'm talking about the path on Christie. So we should say to them, no, because you did such a bad job on Christie, and then just let them take us to court, because I don't think they'd win. Save money that way. Thank you.
Since we took public comment, I know Councilmember Martinez has a question, but you're on a different matter, is that right? So may I ask one just follow-up question?
Yes, go ahead.
For staff. The contract related to Christie, that was certified final, correct? So we don't have any
Correct.
leverage on
Accepted as complete.
Okay. Thank you.
So I didn't want to pull any items. I just wanted to highlight 10.4, 10.5, and 10.6, the support letters that that are under consideration. I just wanted to highlight for the members of the public that's, sorry, I think I had those wrong. Sorry, 10.5, 10.6, and 10.7. So letter of support for Senate Bill 562, that's the Healthy California Act, which would ostensibly offer universal health care to those of us in California. AB 932, Assemblymember Ting, that is for homeless shelters and permanent supportive housing. And AB 1316, Assemblymembers Quirk and Garcia, and this is for childhood lead poisoning prevention. And I just wanted to thank Vice Mayor Bowders and Mayor Donahue for bringing these forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Do I have a motion about?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Martinez, seconded by Vice Mayor Bowders. Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Aye.
And Mayor Donahue.
Aye. Okay, we're moving on to public hearings. 11.1, introduction and first reading of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville amending the planning regulations of Title IX of the Emeryville Municipal Code regarding accessory dwellings. Is there going to be a presentation? Diane?
Yes, there is. Good evening, council members. Yes, this is about accessory dwelling units. It's about state mandated changes to the planning regulations to make it easier to build them. An accessory dwelling unit is a single dwelling unit on a lot with an existing single unit dwelling. It can be detached, attached, or part of the existing house. It has to be an accessory use. The owner has to occupy one of the units, and the current code calls it a secondary residential unit. Whoops. Right now, it's already a ministerial approval. The staff can decide and has no discretion. If it meets all the requirements, we approve it. The parking requirement is less than for other units, and the setback requirements are 2. And last year, 2 of these units were approved. So what the changes that we are proposing to make as a result of the state legislation are the title of what they're called, not secondary residential units, but accessory dwelling units. The staff now has a 120-day limit. If they meet all the requirements, they have a complete application. We have 120 days to approve it. And something that was a little confusing in our staff report, the state statute requires the city's size limit to be at least 1,200 square feet. So we chose 1,200 square feet as our size limit. So right now, the old ordinance, half the accessory dwelling unit can be half as big as the main house, up to 900 square feet. Now with the proposed ordinance, it can be half as big as the main house, up to 1,200 square feet if it's attached. If it's detached, it can be as big as the main house. And for parking, the state statute says that if the if the unit is within a certain distance of transit, then we don't have any parking requirement. And that's true everywhere in Emeryville, so the parking is 0. homeowner converts a garage to an accessory dwelling unit, right now, the way our ordinance reads now, if you can't replace the main house parking without putting it in the front yard or the street side yard, then you can't do it. But with this ordinance now, if you can replace the house parking in the front yard or the street side yard, and you can still convert your garage to an accessory unit. There are some other parts of the state statutes that didn't really apply here. They put a limit on what standards we could set, and we aren't setting any of the standards that they say we can't. So we didn't have to do anything there. It exempts accessory dwelling units from density rules. We already have that in our code. And it relaxes certain rules for accessory dwelling units in existing houses, but we don't have those rules anyway, so we didn't have to do anything about that. And there's another statute about junior ADUs, which is a dwelling unit that shares a bathroom or a kitchen with some other part of the house. And we already have that in our code. It's called group residential, so we didn't have to do anything about that. So to adopt this ordinance, the council has to make 3 findings. The first one is that it's consistent with the general plan. It is consistent with 2 elements. It helps to implement a land use goal about mix of housing types, and it helps to implement a housing element goal about variety of housing types for all socioeconomic levels with a variety of lifestyles. The second finding is that it's of benefit to the public, and it's a benefit because it allows a diverse range of households to live in Emeryville. And the third finding is that it's in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and it is because it meets the general rule. It can be seen for sure that it won't affect the environment. So that completes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So just to confirm, a detached accessory dwelling unit can be up to 1,200 square feet. So 100% or 1,200 square feet, whichever is the
larger. No, not whichever. It can be as big as the main house, up to 1,200 square feet.
Up to 1,200 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in 2016, there were 2 units that were built in Emeryville?
That were approved, yeah.
And do you expect us to have more as a result of this passing, or not necessarily because it's not that much different?
It's not a huge difference, but we ran an article about it in the activity guide, and we've had some calls about it. So whether that'll translate into getting more units built, we'll see. It might. The parking requirement changes will make a difference.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to make us so we really are going to have to think about our parking ordinance. Any other clarifying questions?
Okay.
Okay, public comment about it.
I haven't heard or seen anything about having underground parking. What's wrong with that? I mean, is there any restriction? Are we just at the sea level? We're afraid of flooding? I mean, can we have parking underground and have more living space? People have parking and they still go outside to store their stuff, their junk, like you call. And here we have a new housing, and we have no garage and no storage. I mean, something is wrong here, you know. I mean, is it against the law to excavate, to make a parking underground? I mean, something has to be reviewed on that. I mean, just like in your house, you have no parking. I mean, it's a large house, and you're on a corner, but you block everybody else. Can't. Why can't you dig under and have a storage place for the kid to play, or me to work there? Thank you.
Any other comments?
Well, I like the idea of making it easier for ADUs to be built. I mean, this has been talked about for 15 years, at least that much in Emeryville. So it's good to see it finally, the talk is finally amounting to something. However, I'm a little concerned about the increasing the size up to 100% of the main house. So that's sort of against the spirit of the ADU. The idea is it's supposed to be an adjunct, smaller building. And there's reasons why you want that is because the intensity of the density. We want to increase density, but we don't want to increase the intensity of the density. And nothing was said by Diane about lot coverage. In other words, building coverage on the lot. Like what percentage of a lot can now be covered with building? Because if you get that number bumped up too high, we start to lose quality of life. Much less greenery, less outdoor space to relax in and enjoy for our residents. And so we need to make sure that you put that in the ordinance, that a certain minimum percentage of lot coverage can't be exceeded. And that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
I'd like to ask, Diana, would you be able to say something about that? Does the new ordinance address the issue of, the percentage of lot?
We don't have lot coverage standards. We have setbacks. We have floor area ratio. In most cases where these would occur in the residential zones, the floor area ratio is 0.5. And so that kind of gives you a de facto lot coverage maximum of 50%. If you were to max out on your FAR in a one-story building, it couldn't cover any more than 50% of the lot. Now, ADUs, like secondary dwelling units secondary residential units that we now have, are exempt from floor area ratio, but they do have the limits on size. They're not exempt from setback requirements, however, so they still would have to be set back. I would note that all of these things that we're proposing here are mandated by the state. We really don't have the discretion to change them, and in fact, they are already in effect. It took effect January 1st. This ordinance is just playing catch-up to get our ordinance consistent with state law. But whether we adopt this ordinance or not, these requirements are already in effect and will continue to be.
Okay, thank you for addressing that question.
Can we close public comment?
Yes, if there's no other public comment.
It's a hearing, I think.
Okay, seeing none, let's have some deliberation about this. Or any?
Yeah, Charlie's made the point, but I completely agree with Mr. Donahue. This is like, I can't believe I'm at this point where I'm now that guy who says Sacramento interfered, local control. But the truth of the matter is that we have a 0.5 FAR and half the lot is covered by a building. There's no obligation for them to take the remaining 1,200 feet in a 2,400 square foot lot. We've filled it out. We've killed livability by doing it this way. They clearly only looked at lots in the hills with large homes that had lots of backyard space and thought people would put cute cottages there. When I tried to purchase a home last year, two that I bid on in the Triangle, they were 1,100 and 1,200 square feet, and the lots were not even 3,000 square feet. And so my fear is this is the new, the desire to create housing in an urban environment to improve, so we don't have employees who have to come from Tracy to their job. I get exactly why we need to do this, but it feels like it was rushed. And so my only question is similar to what was asked, but we don't have the ability to regulate that the 1,200 or whatever the amount is that's maxed out. Can we require it to be storied? Can we say that regardless of the setbacks and the lot lines, can we actually have a provision that says if you build above a certain amount of square feet or a certain percentage of the master house, that you have to build up? Because 1,200 square feet, matched to a 1,200 square foot house on a 2,400 square foot lot means no green space, no active space, wall-to-wall housing versus a two-story 600-foot house. And I would be curious if we could require that it be built within the standards for the height so that it goes up as opposed to out.
I think we would have to look into that. I'm not that familiar with exactly what the state requirements for ADUs are. Do you know, Diana? If we could require them to go above, to add floors if it's over a certain lot coverage or something?
Because we're not limiting the square feet, we're just saying that you have to stack it, so that's like a regular house.
Can you go back to the slide that had the chart between the current and new regulation for me?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Let's see.
We don't even have to say stack it. We just have to say, look, you could build a 1,200 square foot unit, but you have to leave X amount of percentage of your lot still green.
The statute explicitly allows us to regulate lot coverage,
Well, I think we should be doing that. That's my personal opinion.
so we could add that.
Yeah, why don't we table this and come back and
Not
craft that and see if we can...
Continue. Well,
Yeah.
this is a first reading only.
I also have one more question. So for the current regulation, 50% of the main house up to 900 square feet, that's the state law, right?
No, that's
That's our
That's our current.
law. So
Our
proposed-
ordinance
the
based on
100
the earlier
detached-
state law.
Okay, then the 100% detached for detached ADUs, that is the state law.
Correct.
So, yeah. I move to continue the matter,
Yeah.
Do we need to, I thought it was just a first reading.
but it's on the agenda, so we have to.
Well, I mean, we can either make the changes that you've requested and bring it back for a second reading with those changes, or we could bring it back for another first reading.
Do we know what we want the changes to be, though?
Are we on any timeline with the state to come into compliance?
Well, like I said, it's already in effect.
My
we can-
suggestion to my colleagues would be that if we could choose to do it tonight, but it might be helpful to have some information about how much vacant lot use or unused for housing purposes lot use we have in the city on average. Like, not asking for a major statistical study, obviously, but just to see that so we don't pick a percentage that doesn't work out to what we need to do.
Not a major statistical study.
No. Study. I said the bad word. I know. I'm sorry.
We just wanted to give you an
Not a
opportunity
study.
to look at this.
Look at every property in the city, sure.
It just
No,
feels like that if you don't put some requirement to preserve open space, it could just be
Right.
used as flat space. and then-
We understand what you're getting at. I think it would probably be prudent to continue this and let us look into it rather than just try to throw something together here on the fly. So if I'm hearing you correctly, your main concern is lot coverage. You would want to make sure that with an ADU that there is no more than X percent of the property covered by buildings.
Right.
Let me ask one thing. I'm not real familiar with lot coverage because we don't have it and we've never had to enforce it. Would you include accessory structures like garages in that limit?
Yeah, because they can be converted into usable space. People do it now, so I would say sure. That's my
Well,
opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if they were converted, then they would be subject to whatever coverage limit
Yeah.
you put.
I mean, but then, I mean, it would depend on how we defined lot coverage, right? That's what you're asking, essentially.
Right, I'm asking if you would include accessory structures as well. We'll look into it and we'll bring you back a recommendation at a future meeting.
Yeah, I can't imagine there won't be, based on what the current lot coverage is, and altering it, because I don't even know that a lot of lots are currently less than 50% covered by the main dwelling.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's safe to say that many of the residential properties, certainly in the Triangle and Doyle Street neighborhoods, probably exceed the FAR that our current zoning ordinance allows.
Right.
So I'm not sure going by the existing built environment is necessarily the best measure, but we'll look into it and bring you back a recommendation.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Carpio, do you have something in particular on this issue?
I'm just trying to expose something that is current in my block, Ocean Avenue. There is a difference between Ocean Avenue Emeryville and Ocean Avenue in Oakland. Ocean Avenue in Emeryville does not have underground garage, while all the houses in Ocean Avenue in Oakland, they have underground garage. I say, is it something that the city wants to prevent? Or, I mean, we squabble here about open space, but then we are sacrificing the open space to park. And I mean, is digging expensive? I don't know. I mean, I do that by hand, so I don't know how much it costs.
Okay, we've voted to continue that, and
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
if I may, I'm going to be a little bit of a stickler on the record here, but we had a motion on the floor from Vice Mayor Bowders to continue this item. If the will of the council is to do that, then I would ask for a second and a vote on that, please.
Second it.
Moved by Vice Mayor Bowders, seconded by Councilmember Medina. Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Aye.
And Mayor Donahue.
Aye.
Thank you.
11.2, introduction and first reading of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville amending Section 9.5 1907B of Article 5 of the Planning Regulations of Title IX, the Emeryville Municipal Code regarding development impact fees for changes.
All right, Mayor Donahue and members of the City Council, you have before you an ordinance, proposed ordinance for first reading. In summary, the Planning Commission has reviewed this and they recommend that you amend Section 9.5/1907B of the Planning Regulations to specify that development impact fees that are applicable to former uses shall be subtracted from fees for new uses, whether or not those fees for the former uses were actually paid. By way of background, the original traffic impact fee ordinance was adopted in September 1990, and it had language that said, fees charged on new development to accommodate a change in land use shall receive a credit based on the previous land use. And that was in effect for about 24 years, up until 2014, when the new development impact fees were adopted and the traffic impact fee was updated. Like I said, the new language says the amount of any fee to be paid in connection with a change of use shall be 1, the amount of the fee required pursuant to subsection A of that section for the proposed use, 2, minus the amount of the fee paid for the last legal use of the existing structure. Now, that may appear to be similar language, but there is a subtle and significant difference, which is that in the 1990 ordinance, the credit was automatic, whether the previous fee was paid or not. In the new ordinance, the credit only applies if the fee was actually paid. This has profound implications for applicants, and it really doesn't meet the intent of the impact fee. The intent of the impact fee is to mitigate the impacts of the new use. And when you do a traffic study, for example, you always subtract the traffic that's generated by whatever the previous use was from the traffic generated by the new use, and that gives you your incremental difference in traffic. So that's the traffic that is that the new use is responsible for, and that must be mitigated. Under our current code, you only get a credit for that previous traffic if it was actually paid for. So here is an illustrative example. I know this is a little bit confusing and complicated, so I'll try to walk through it. To take the example of a 10,000 square foot building that used to be a warehouse and has been converted to an office. So the warehouse is the previous use, the office is the new use. Under the old fees that were in effect up until 2014, we didn't have a parks and recreation fee. We only had a transportation fee. So the transportation fee for office was $1.97 a square foot, and the fee for warehouse was 38 cents a square foot. So for a 10,000 square foot space, the fee for the office would be $19,700. The fee for the warehouse would have been $3,800, so you subtracted the $3,800 from the $19,700 and you got a net fee of $15,900, and that's what they were required to pay. Whether or not this $3,800 was paid or not, they still got a credit for it, and it was $15,900 the total. Now, under the new fees that we have today, we have two different scenarios here, this column here and this column here. This is the no credit scenario. This is where the former warehouse space never paid any impact fees. The current fee for office is now $3.97 a square foot, so you can see it's more than twice as much as it used to be. And now we have a new impact fee of $3.88 a square foot for Parks and Recreation. So if you multiply those numbers out, you get a total of $78,500. No credit for the previous warehouse use, so the new user has to pay $78,500. If the previous warehouse use did pay a fee, you still have the $78,500 for the new use, but you would then get a credit for the warehouse use, and the new fee for warehouse is 85 cents a square foot for transportation and 75 cents a square foot for Parks and Recreation. And so that total $1.60 a square foot, which works out to $16,000 for a 10,000 square foot space. So you subtract the $16,000 from the $78,500 and you get $62,500. So now with that credit, they pay $62,500, whereas previously they would have had to pay about a quarter that amount, but at least they did get a credit for the previous use. Businesses in Emeryville have faced a significant increase in development fees in the recent years, and the removal of this credit has made this increase even more. So we recommend reinstating the credit for the previous uses, whether the fee was actually paid or not. I'd like to note that we do not recommend applying this credit to the affordable housing impact fee, and the reason for that is that the affordable housing impact fee, which is currently $425 a square foot, about to go up to $427, I think, on July 1st, which you recently approved, is the same for all uses. So if you subtract the fee for the previous use from the fee for the new use, the result will be zero. So no one will ever pay an affordable housing impact fee. Therefore, we don't recommend taking this approach for that particular fee. Now, in order to try to assess the fiscal impact of this proposal, it's a little bit complicated and hypothetical. But what we did was we went and looked at all of the building permits that were issued since these fees took effect in September 2014 to try to identify those that applied to a change of use. And we came up with 5 such permits. Of those 5 projects, if they had no fee credit, their transportation fees would be $297,000. Their park and rec fees would have been $136,000, total of $433,000. If they had gotten a credit for the previous use, that would total $234,000. Now these are 5 different projects, 5 different uses, 5 different previous uses, so it's all a little bit complicated. There's a big spreadsheet behind all of this, but basically it would have been $234,000. They would have been credited for a net of $199,000. That's a 54% reduction in the impact fee, which sounds like a lot, and it's not insignificant. It is a loss of $234,000 to the city. If you look at the total amount of all projects, of all impact fees, though, that were collected since that time, this includes new construction and everything else, it's about $3.5 million. So $234,000 of that is 6.7%. Again, it's not insignificant, but it's not a huge percentage. I would also like to point out a couple of things. One is that according to our counter staff, our building permit technician and our assistant planner who staff the front counter spend their entire days just talking to the public about their development projects. Quite a few people who want to establish a business in Emeryville look at these impact fees and say, forget it. You know, they just don't do their projects because they are deterred because of the magnitude of our impact fees. If we were to pass this ordinance and they got an automatic credit for the previous use, whether it was paid or not, their impact fees would be lower. They might not be so inclined to walk away from the projects. And for those that we did manage to entice to stay in Emeryville those small businesses that we did manage to get here because of this change, we will generate additional revenue. I can't quantify that. I can't tell you how much that would be, but it would be, you know, something that would offset this $234,000 loss. In fact, it might even just be a wash, that, you know, it wouldn't really result in that big of a change. And I just want to say that in staff's view, this is simply a matter of equity. I want to give you a real simple example. Let's suppose you have two business people, Sam and Sally, right? And Sam and Sally don't know each other. They've never met each other. They don't have anything to do with each other, except for the fact that they both, at one time, rented the same space in a building, right? So Sam was there first. He had, let's say, a warehouse or something. And then he left, and then Sally came in, and she wanted to start her new consulting business and convert it to an office in the space that Sam used to have. So Sally's at our front counter and she's looking at her potential impact fees. Well, if Sam had been there a short time and had paid a bunch of impact fees, then Sally would get those fees subtracted from her impact fees and she wouldn't have to pay as much, and she'd say, oh great, and she'd, you know, file her application. But if Sam had been there for a real long time and was grandfathered in and had never been subject to the impact fees and therefore had never paid any, then Sally would get stuck paying his fees as well as her own fees. That is, the fees that would have been charged on his business, as well as the incremental increase that will be charged on her business. And it has absolutely nothing to do with either Sam or Sally. It's just a quirk of the situation, whether he had actually paid fees previously or not. So Sally comes to the front counter. In one situation, she says, these fees are reasonable, I can pay them. She files her application. In the other situation, she looks at it and says, holy cow, I have to pay that much just because the previous guy didn't pay anything? Forget it. I'm not going to file that application. So, as I said, I know that's a real simplistic example, but that's exactly what this is. So, to me, it's an issue of fairness and equity, and we believe that this should be adopted. So the Planning Commission recommends that the City Council adopt the proposed amendment. This is the exact language. It's not very long. It's just this one section. The language that's in white would not be changed, and the language that's in red represents the change. So what it would say now is the amount of any fee to be paid in connection with a change of use shall be, 1, the amount of the fee required pursuant to subsection A of this section for the proposed use, 2, minus, and then we would add a credit for the amount of the fee, strike the word paid, for the last legal use of the existing structure, and then we would add, pursuant to subsection A of this section, whether or not such fee was actually paid. This credit shall not apply to the affordable housing impact fee required by Article 4 of this chapter. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Clarifying questions.
I have one. So when Sally comes and doesn't pull her permit because we're absorbing the fees, are they going to Berkeley or Oakland where the fees are less?
I don't know. I mean,
I guess the question
presumably.
Are the fees lower in Oakland and Berkeley?
We have done a fee comparison. When we brought the council, and I realize it wasn't this council, but the two of you, I think we're here, back in October of 2015 when the affordable housing impact fee was raised from $20,000 a unit to $28,000 a unit, we did bring you a comparison of all the fees, including the impact fees and the other fees of about a half a dozen surrounding cities, including Oakland, Berkeley, and others. And our fees, I can tell you, based on that comparison, are higher than all of the others. The total amount of the fees.
Okay, public comment about this.
I think you have to open the public hearing.
Oh.
Good evening, council members. Jeff Sears, Wareham Development. We support the change in this. I think there are some other legal compulsions that may exist. I'm not an attorney, but I think your ability to charge fees ultimately directly relate to the environmental impacts created by developments. And really, the way this is written now, which we think is incorrect, acts as if projects that have impacts, they have uses that are generating traffic and so forth, don't exist if they didn't pay you. But the environmental impact report that was done when prior council adopted a new general plan said they took into consideration all the existing uses and operations in the city and said if we develop according to this new general plan, these will be the impacts, and they're going to cost us money and we need to pay for them, and we divide it up. But so another example would just be there's a warehouse on this corner and another warehouse on the other, and someone wants to rent one of those to convert to office. They're being told their impact fees are different just based on when that warehouse came into existence and if it paid a fee. So I think there's some legal issues that I'm not going to opine on, but I think there's a real lack of nexus in the way the thing is written now. And I will say we have a number of tenants who have, with their own projects, changed some uses. The general plan in many cases have made some uses sort of grandfathered non-conforming, and so the plan is we want you to see these uses come. So that's what they're doing. And they've been very frustrated at the inequity of this situation because it doesn't really relate to impacts. It acts as if a use there has none because it's just old. And it does have those impacts. And you should get fees for if the new use is deemed to generate more traffic than the old, you should get that increment, but you can't pretend it wasn't there because you weren't paid for it. So that's my thought.
I just have a qualifying question. Charlie talked about small businesses and small entities. So I just need to, is that really what it's about, the small, or is it going to be for large groups as well, like Wareham and that? Thank you.
Charlie, would you answer that question?
Sure. I mean, the examples I was giving were small businesses, but this would apply to everybody. I think the point, though, is that this is for changes of use, so obviously it's for existing buildings. New buildings that are constructed aren't a change of use, so they don't get any credit for any previous use. They have to just pay the whole fee. I think that the small businesses typically are the ones that occupy the spaces that represent a change of use, but that's not to say that there can't be big corporations that are doing the same thing. But it would apply to everybody.
Okay, any other? Andre.
I'm just wondering how the application would go for property that are rehabilitated. That, you know, what was going on before and after the rehabilitation is changed into something else, and then I don't see any previews for that, and I think it's important. Otherwise, we are going to put a stop on people who wants to rehabilitate or transform their building, and we have to look into this. I mean, it's common sense, no?
Anyone else? Okay, let's have some discussion.
Let's. Would you like to close the public hearing?
Oh, thank you. Public hearing's closed. I could tell some stories about how my neighbor and my lawyer, Greg Harper, representing a developer who has property here in town, successfully sued the city of Alameda over the fee issue. He claimed that the fees were not equitably applied to that project, and they were successful, and Alameda lost lots of money fighting this, and to me, this looks inequitable and looks like potential legal problems. I'd be curious to hear what Mr. Guina thinks about this.
Just to clarify, do you mean the proposal looks inequitable or the current situation?
Your direction looks sensible from defending this, okay. You know, from a rational, equitable viewpoint. Do you think that our existing fee schedule the way it is now could put us in a bad position.
Well, we have not been challenged on our fee schedule to date. That being said, as Charlie had pointed out in his presentation, the purpose of this ordinance is to further insulate the city against any future challenges to our fee schedule, or to our impact fees. So, the idea being that, again, we're trying to address the impacts that are imposed by a current application coming to the city in relation to the prior use that was there. But impact fees are supposed to mitigate the current the application that's in front of the agency. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Meaning the incremental effects of the new development as opposed to all of the effects that were there before.
That's correct. Thank you.
So, given that, doesn't this credit, so I'm sorry, given that we start at the baseline not at zero, but at what at the current impact is, and now the increase, I'm missing how we're not just getting a second credit for what has happened already.
Well, under the current code, you don't get that credit unless the money was actually paid. If the money was not actually paid, then you have to pay it too.
I'm sorry, I must have misstated my question. We're not starting at fees aside, we're talking about impact. The way we're calculating the impact is starting at current levels of impact and looking at future level of impact.
Correct.
So we are just looking at that change.
Incremental change, right.
We're not looking at zero. And so I'm stuck at where the past impacts the new impact, right? We're giving credit for a fee that wasn't paid for an impact that already exists. So I guess that's where I'm kind of stuck. And in your example, I actually thought the across the street example was a much better comment on equity. I think new owners always pay more. That's just the nature of inflation. When Sam moves out or moved in, his purchase price was lower than Sally's. So to say that he paid lower impact fees just fits with that premise.
But he may not have paid anything.
Yeah.
Is the problem.
Well, right, but the fee didn't exist. That's, so I'm going to go back to you guys.
Well, I'm really thinking we really should do this. This makes total sense to me, and if we don't do it, I think we're risking some potential liability here.
I'm inclined to support.
Yeah, as much as it pains me to not take in impact fees for stuff we really want to do, I do understand how some people getting the credit and other people not getting the credit just based on how long the previous owner has been there seems fundamentally inequitable.
Okay, is that a motion and a second I just heard?
So moved.
Is that a motion to read by title only?
Move to read by title.
Well, this is the first reading now?
Sorry.
Okay.
And is that a second I'm hearing over here?
Sure, I'll second it.
Okay, so I'll recap. Moved by Councilmember Martinez, seconded by Councilmember Medina to read the ordinance by title only. Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Aye.
And Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville amending Section 9-5.1907 sub B of Article 5 of the Planning Regulations and Title 9 of the Emeryville Municipal Code regarding development impact fees for changes of use.
Move the ordinance.
I'll second it.
Moved by Councilmember Martinez, seconded by Councilmember Medina to approve the first reading and introduction of the ordinance. Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Aye.
And Mayor Donahue?
Aye. Okay, we have a public hearing about a resolution granting a waiver from the noise ordinance to DPR Construction for construction work on Saturday, May 6th, May 13th, I assume that's a Saturday, and May 20th, I assume that's a Saturday, and May 27th, at the Emery Station West Transit Center project, located at 5950 Horton Street.
Good evening, Mayor Donahue, council members. I'm Miru Desai, senior planner, and I'm here to present this proposal by DPR Construction Company. The standard construction hours in our city is Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. If there is a proposal or a need to work in the evenings beyond 6 p.m. or during weekends, then the developer needs to obtain permission from the city council. So we have received a request from DPR Construction, which wants to work on Saturdays, essentially all Saturdays in May, all 4 Saturdays in May, to work on the Emery Station West project, which is often also known as the Transit Center, which is located at 5959 Horton Street. As you may recall, or you may know, that the Emery Station West is a 7-story office lab building above 2 levels of parking, which was approved by the council back in 2010 and has been under construction since November of last year. So the frequency, like I'd mentioned, is they're requesting work on 4 Saturdays in May, and the request is from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Just to get you oriented, this is this project site. You have the post office to the north and the Amtrak station to the south, and this is Horton on the site and the railway tracks towards the west. So the reason for the request, so there are 3 kinds of work that is going to get done during the 4 Saturdays. So the first 2 Saturdays, there's going to be electric welding work. And the idea is that the overhead welding work along the east side of the building, which is along Horton Street, has a potential for electric sparks falling on vehicles and pedestrians, particularly when the welding occurs at the higher levels of the building. This is going to be a 9-story building, essentially. On these 2 Saturdays, there'll be 8 workers using 3 generators. And in addition to the fact that it's going to be on a Saturday where we expect less vehicular traffic as well as pedestrian traffic, we have also staff feels that and therefore we've added a condition which requires them to have a flagger station on the street when the actual welding operations are occurring, so that just in case, they fall on a pedestrian that is walking along. So this is Horton Street on the top, and so the work would be right along that side of the building. The welding work on the remaining building will occur during normal construction hours. So this is the picture of the generator that will be used. The second thing that will occur, and this will occur on the 3rd Saturday in May, is a cement pour. It's a fairly large concrete pour. It'll involve 20 workers, and there'll be 1 on-site concrete pump that will be used. So there will be 1 truck arriving or departing the site every 10 to 15 minutes. And in order to cause minimal disruption to traffic during this continuous flow of traffic, that is the reason for the concrete pour on May 20th. So this is the extent of the pour, and this is kind of the truck, the images of the truck that we would be seeing, and the concrete pour, the cement truck here. On the last Sunday will involve demobilization of the crane that is there right now, is to take it down. About 12 workers will be on site, and it will also require rerouting and some street closure. Attached to your staff report was also a preliminary format for the street closure. They will need to obtain an encroachment permit from Public Works in order to reroute and do the street closure. In the resolution, which includes the conditions of approval, we have certain standard conditions that we apply to all requests for noise waivers. And in this case, like I mentioned, there are two additional. One is requirement of a flagger, and the other one is a need for an encroachment permit for street closures. We are required to do notifications, so we did that. A 300-foot notification by the city was done, and as well as a newspaper notification by the city. And so again, this is the site, and it is mainly in a office area. So all this is essentially, Wareham buildings. So the nearest residents that live here are outside the 300-foot corridor, and they're about within 500 feet. Is the terraces to the south and the Holden Street Center live work units, which is right here. Both these buildings, owners as well as residents, were notified of this request. I have not received any emails or letters or comment letters saying one way or the other. So staff recommends that the council approve the request. We believe that this is reasonable given the nature of the work involved. The nearest residents do live at the terraces, and they're about 500 feet away, and they have been informed, and we have not heard from them. The applicant has requested the start time of 8 a.m. in the morning. We are, however, recommending that be pushed to 9 a.m. a little bit later, and then they would get the extra hour at the end of the day. So the resolution that's in front of you, the way it's reads is that it will be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on the 3 Saturdays that are in front of you, and then when they have the cement pour, it would be from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So that, yes.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Yeah.
Just to confirm, May 6th, 13th, and 27th, I believe.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Okay.
17th is not a Sunday, yeah, that was the 27th. So that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions. If you have a question from DPR Construction, one of their representative, Rory, is here, and he's happy to answer any questions that you may have as well.
Questions? Nope. Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Come on up, Alfred.
I would like to, not to influence you, but I would like the council to approve this. And the main reason is because you just don't choose the weather. They decided to do that now because it's not raining, but if we start to object and cause trouble there, then we don't know what's going to happen. And so the right time is here, and I think we have to let them do the project. It'll be economical for us and for the company, because the faster we go on this type of things here, the better. It's just like in any other construction. Thank you.
Well, I've paid pretty close attention to this project, and I happen to be riding my bicycle past the project 4 different Saturdays over the last couple months, and of the 4 times I happened to be going by, the company was violating the noise ordinance. They were working on Saturdays, and they're not allowed to do that without asking for a noise waiver, and they haven't up till now asked for one. And so 100% of the time I've happened by this project, they're working illegally. So 3 of the times I called the police department, police came out, shut down the job, and the next time I go out, they're back again working on a Saturday illegally. It's the same people. So they don't respect our city, they don't respect us, they don't respect our noise ordinance. To now reward them for the past, horrible behavior, I don't think we should do that. I think we should, we have a noise ordinance for a reason. We decided collectively what Emeryville is going to build massively. but at least we're going to have quiet weekends. That was the deal swung with the residents, between the city hall and the residents. And you know, frankly, I've only seen one noise waiver ever denied in my 35 years. Well, we haven't had a noise ordinance that long, but since we've had a noise ordinance, I've only seen it denied once. Again, you know, we have a noise ordinance for a reason. We decided to make this ordinance, spent a lot of time and money, I might add, to make this ordinance happen, and you know, it should be honored. Okay, now we listened closely, and they said welding, a huge concrete pour, big welding job, moving the crane, and they're saying that these jobs are too big to do on for them to do on a weekday. Well, that's precisely the reason why that shouldn't be done on a weekend, because if they're too big to do on a weekday, they're definitely too big to do on the days that we're supposed to have, you know, some quiet in Emeryville. And if you look closely, I mean, if you look at their record, constantly violating our noise ordinance, they want to maximize their profits. That's what this company is interested in doing. And they've shown that by this constantly disobeying our ordinance. That's what they're trying to do here. They're trying to protect their profit margin, and that's just not good enough. We need to have a better reason. There needs to be some emergency, I say, or else we should just say no. Protecting this company desire to protect their profit margin, it's just not good enough for us to say no to for us to say yes to a noise ordinance waiver, especially given their horrible violation record. And you can confirm with the police about the fact that they have been violating the noise ordinance. Thank you.
Jeff Sears, Wareham Development. I'd like to speak to that comment because we have discussed it with Maru. DPR was trying to dewater on several weekends. We've had 75 days of rain since we started this project. It was not expected. So controlling the water on site from not leaving the site was a decision made. Yes, it probably should have been done differently, but that's what was the work that was going on. So we've sort of apologized that was occurring, although I'm not sure it was a bad decision. Regarding this work, what DPR is asking for is to try to do stuff that's not going to disturb residents. That you've heard that the people closest by that we're very sensitive to haven't raised an objection. There's safety involved. This is mostly a commercial area, so the traffic, both pedestrian and car, is much lower on the weekends, and we think it's just smarter and safer to do it. And it actually costs more money to work on a Saturday. So it's not about profit. It's about minimizing the total time of disruption. So you could work only 3 hours a day, and it would take 4 years. So we're just trying to get the disruption done as fast as possible.
Any other public comments, testimony?
Can I fill out the last of my 3 minutes, the remainder?
You used your 3 minutes.
You've already
completely.
spoken. Is anyone else? Okay, I close the public hearing. Any discussion here about this? I've been involved in building things, and I weld. It's true that sparks do come out. I appreciate the idea that the road can still be used with the flag people. Only when the welding is going on will they direct people away from that area. Concrete pours of this size, no matter what, are going to be loud, and there'll be dozens of concrete trucks on our streets. And I just think that overall our city would really suffer on a weekday to have that volume of concrete trucks waiting to get in there. It would really disrupt the surrounding businesses. I don't think we should penalize the surrounding businesses for this kind of these individual projects. And yes, this company has been illegally working on Saturdays. I personally witnessed it. I don't like it, but that's independent of these decisions. I think I think this is the right decision for our public, for our city, to approve this noise waiver, or allow this work to be done on at these times.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to appreciate staff for making the adjustment to 9 to 5 p.m. because that's exactly what I would have asked for. In light of the comments we got when ECCL was under construction, and what the neighbors asked for at that time, even though there's no one here from the Terraces or Hollis Street Center, if they do become disturbed, I would hope that the 9 to 5 time would help them enjoy their Saturday morning just a bit more. And I agree about the concrete pours. Not only would we be inconveniencing the businesses on a regular work day, but concrete needs to be poured in a timely manner. So if there is significant traffic in the area of construction, and the concrete can't get to its destination in time, then there's an impact on the completion of that project.
I'm going to take a moment and use my bully pulpit here. I was in support of the Saturday permits until you came and said, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. That sort of bothers me, Mr. Sears, so I'm going to chastise you for that. Was it the right decision? No. Breaking the rules is not the right decision. 4 times is not the right number of times. You come and pull a permit the second time. We figured out pretty early on that it was going to rain a lot this year. That said, and it's funny, that's the only time I'm ever in that space is on Saturday mornings, because that's when the post office is open on my schedule, and I can't tell you the number of people I run into every Saturday there. That's a little hub. But that's a tight space, and I can't argue with the number of cement trucks that are going to come in for that big of a pour. The sparks flying, I'm not so on board with, but the disassembling of the crane. And for those reasons, I'll end up probably supporting this, but I'm going to wag my finger at you one more time.
I have a couple things. I would like to agree with Councilmember Pats. Wareham has been here and been doing great stuff for a long time. I think the thing that gives me heartburn is this wasn't like 1 or 2 times where I totally see the need at a construction level to do things to prevent the project from actually having construction problems. I totally get that. And rules that we set are not flexible, but when we do it 1 or 2 times, it's, I think, prudent to come and tell the city that, hey, we've had these needs to do it, not to wait for complaints from residents about it, and then to come in and ask for waivers to do more of it is just really, you really put us in a bad position when you do that. And especially when we just gave you a transportation fee credit. It really does not make me feel good to vote for this. I want to tell everybody who's here on that. That being said, I'm a pragmatist about this, and I completely agree with the things that Council Members Martinez and Donahue, and I think Pats, have all said about the need to do this. I have one adjustment I would like us to consider making, and it pertains to the May 27th date.
Oh, yeah.
My issue with the May 27th date is a couple things. First, May 27th is the Memorial Day weekend. I ride Amtrak to work daily, and although we've talked about residents, and I appreciate the staff report about that, I'm a daily commuter on Amtrak, and so those who are like me, who know that there's a 622 and a 752, and they know all the train schedule, don't ride on Saturday. But people who ride the California Zephyr ride on Saturday, and it is the longest continuous daily service in the United States, and it goes from Emeryville to Chicago every day, and it leaves at 9:10 a.m. every morning, and it goes to Chicago. And the proposed start time for the 27th creates an unusual problem, in my opinion, because the people who will ride the Zephyr on a holiday weekend will be people who do not use the train on a weekly basis. And what I find is that people who come to the train station who aren't users of it don't know where to park, we have construction going on. They don't know how to get off Powell Street and find the train station easily. And I have seen many exasperated seniors and families running to take 5 suitcases to the train right before it leaves. And so I would ask that we recommend that there not only be no road closure, but no setup for road closure prior to 9:30 a.m. on the 27th, so that nobody's in the street with a truck, so that families who are going to get on that train for that holiday weekend can do that. That would be my amendment request.
I'll make the motion with John's stipulations included.
Second. Moved by Councilmember Bandina, seconded by Councilmember Martinez, to approve the resolution as amended to make a 9:30 start time on May 27th. And that would be no road closures or blockages prior to 9:30. Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you for that. Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Pats.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bowders.
Aye.
And Mayor Donahue.
Aye. Okay, we have first reading of an ordinance amending Section 2-3.309 of Article 3, Title 2, Emeryville Municipal Code, vacancies. Is there a presentation on this?
Mayor and council members, I don't have a formal presentation. This is merely the corresponding item to bring the Planning Commission into the same attendance rules as we recently did with our other committees and commissions.
Oh, yes.
As stated in your staff report. So I'm here to answer questions. If there are none, we can simply open and close the public hearing and take whatever public comment there might be.
No questions for me.
I have a lot of questions, so I would rather hear from the public first.
Okay.
Okay, open the public hearing on this.
I think we should tell the public what this is, since there's no staff presentation. May I do that, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Unless staff would like to do it. Would you like to?
No, go ahead.
This is a proposed ordinance that would create standards for the Planning Commission as it relates to vacancies, and the proposed amendment would require that in the event that a member will be unavoidably absent from a regular or special meeting, the member shall notify the chair, vice chair, and city manager or designee at least 24 hours in advance of the start meeting time, and that if they are absent from 33% of the regular or special meetings in a calendar year, they shall automatically be terminated from the Planning Commission, and that there's a process in this ordinance by which the city would notify after the termination, and the city would notify the council for the replacement of that member of the commission. Is that a correct summary?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so
is the public?
Is there public comment?
Yeah, public comment on this.
Yeah, just so everybody here knows, Jeff Sears from Wareham Development, the one that wants the noise waiver, and the one that's been ultimately responsible for the 4 violations that happened on 4 separate weekends. He relayed something patently false to you just now when he told you that the thing that they were doing on the weekends that they shouldn't have been working was dewatering. That's not what was causing the noise ordinance violations. It was construction work, specifically taking apart of concrete forms that they'd poured on the day before, on the Friday before. Loud banging and crashing of taking apart wood concrete forms. That's the crime that's the noise ordinance violations that were happening that the police came and responded to, not dewatering. That's just a pump that goes on. So just so you know, that he didn't want to tell you that because he wanted to downplay and he wanted to make it seem like, oh, we got a lot of rain and so we couldn't be helped. So you were either lied to or he doesn't know what he's talking about. But it's
Mr. Donahue, what about vacancies on our committees? Are you going to address that issue?
Well, I am addressing that right now.
Okay.
This is poetically connected to that. So anyway, so it's just unseemly to see that the council being lied to by a developer like that. So I just thought you should know. It's just everybody knows you were lied to. Thank you.
Any other public testimony about the vacancy change? Okay, do we have, I'm going to close the public hearing on this.
Well, I have a series of questions, but I don't know how if others have comments first.
No.
Do you?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a few things on this because I appreciate what staff is trying to do here. But first, what was the origin of this? Why did we do this?
So when we visited the amendments to the committee and commission rules, one of the things that we did was address this issue of attendance at meetings. And this is the exact same language that we put into the committee rules of procedure. And in order to bring Planning Commission into conformity with what we were expecting of other commissions, we had to do this in this way because their rules are established in our municipal code. And to change that requires an ordinance to amend that section.
So did the Planning Commission get an opportunity to review this like the committees did? Did you present this to them?
Yes, I met with the Planning Commission as well as all the other committees. And actually, it was comments from the Planning Commission that were a major driver on this.
Okay, so that's great to know. I appreciate that. I was surprised to see this because I didn't know this had been raised as an issue, but I understand why you're doing it. I have some language cleanup that I'd like to discuss with staff, and perhaps the city attorney can help as well. I have several items, but so if I look at section 2-3.309, I'm not sure what the purpose of the word unavoidably is. In the event a member will be unavoidably absent. So there are people who are avoidably absent, so this doesn't apply to them if someone's avoidably absent?
I think that was just meant to convey that it's serious that you attend the meetings and to impart that, you know, before one doesn't attend a meeting that they've committed to be a part of, that they should think about it in a serious way, whether this is an absence that could be avoided or not. I'm happy to strike that language. It's the direct language that I had in the previous rules of procedure for the other committees. I really did lift the exact same language from what you've previously seen.
Okay. My next question is, it's not really clear to me how we're scoring this 33%. Being absent from 33% of regular meetings. So are we saying of all meetings held, of all meetings calendared, of all meetings at a given point? So if you've missed one meeting in the first 3 meetings of the year, are you then having missed 33% of meetings? Is it if we schedule 10 meetings, but we only have 7 and you missed the first 3 meetings and you didn't know that the last 3 meetings would be canceled, you've now violated you know what I'm saying? Like, so what is the standard? It doesn't make it clear here what we're using. So
the intention was for it to be the calendared meetings. So all of the committees have established a number of meetings per year that they will meet. So let's say it's 10 or 6 or 12, whatever it is. And so this was an attempt, since they have different meeting regularities, this was an attempt to make it fair across the various committees. Instead of saying you can only miss 1 or 2 meetings, we decided to do a percentage so that could be reflected against the number of meetings they actually held.
Okay, so that means you wouldn't be able to decide that a person is in violation of this until the end of the year.
Well, again, the way it's worded, it's for how many meetings, regular meetings that your body is meant to hold. And so, for example, I just met with BPAC on this issue to see if there were any questions. They have 10 meetings a year. So 33% of 10 is 3.3. Obviously, we do rounding. So once you've missed more than 3 meetings, you're in violation of the policy. Yeah, but you have regular or special meetings. So if you have missed 3 meetings at the beginning of the year and you schedule 3 special meetings later in the year, you're not at 33%. Well, propose something different. As I said,
that's why I'm trying to clean this up because it really is not. I don't see how this is enforceable. So, my other items are, you know, we don't give notice to the planning commissioner anywhere in here until after we have notified them that they've hit the 33%. That's
the way the rule has always been, that it's an automatic termination whenever attendance policies are violated, that it doesn't take an action of the council. It's automatic termination. The liaison, the secretary of the group, would notify the clerk, and the clerk would notify the council and the person that they're term was. And keeping in mind that this is an attempt, because there have been issues with people not notifying 24 hours in advance, and the other members come and then no quorum is established, and so they've spent time to get to a meeting that then doesn't happen. And also to address the issue of people getting multiple excused absences, and there was previously no way to deal with that. So this was also an attempt to deal with the chronically excused absentee.
Okay, and then, I mean, I understand that. I still think that if we register someone as having an absence under this statute, I think we should send them written notification that the city, from the city clerk's office, that we have recorded an absence, and that if they get to an absence number that would precede the number for which they would become terminated, we should let them know a future absence will result in your automatic termination. I feel it's so much cleaner to be straight up with people and advise them that of this, a reminder of this. These are people who are appointed to the most important advisory body we have, I think. And so I understand the spirit of what you're trying to do. I have no disagreement with that. I don't agree with how we've worded this. So I will, if council is okay, I would like to indulge me and make some amendments to this, if that's okay with people.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so my amendments are this. I think that the use of the word his should say his or her throughout the entire statute. It says his just everywhere. It should say his or her. I would strike the word unavoidably in front of unavoidably absent. It's a meaningless word for this purpose, I think. I would remove the word special from special meetings, and I think it should say 33% of calendared regular meetings. I don't think we should even contemplate special meetings as for the statute. Calendared regular meetings. And I think there should be an added provision somewhere in that paragraph that says the city clerk shall notify any person of a recorded absence for each such occurrence, and the city clerk shall provide notice that a subsequent absence would result in automatic termination pursuant to this section upon such time that it becomes effective.
May I
Yes, of
pause you
course.
there for a second? First of all, could you please read that again slowly, because I need to capture that language, and then could you please also direct me as to where you would like that to be put in that paragraph?
I'll do that. Sure. I see a question.
Oh, can I make a friendly amendment to
Yeah.
a friendly amendment? Instead of his or her, can we do there? There's no need for us to reinforce this as gender
You
binary.
don't need to pass notes. You can all do that. I actually have on here gender neutral / his or her. So I'm totally fine with gender neutral. We can say there. There is totally okay.
That's what happens
He,
when you
him,
like
her, she, they. I don't care. But not his. So
And that was just the language that already exists in there
that's
that I
existing.
didn't.
So we're going to amend the existing language that refers to his, and we'll use a gender neutral. I put in here. My actual suggestion was a or any person. Is that okay? So it's saying notice of
There's a bit
person.
simpler.
There's fine. That's
Okay,
fine.
John, I'm concerned about too much work for the city clerk. Is there a way we could cut down on noticed?
Well, let me ask this. How many people have been over 33% in the last few years? Anybody in Planning Commission?
There have been people that have been terminated for that. Planning Commission,
No.
this may result in that, but not so far.
Mr. Mayor, this is only for Planning Commission, so it's.
So we're not putting this requirement for notice in anything else. All right. So I'm.
Well, we've already acted on all the rest of the committees.
Right.
This is exactly the same language that you saw on April 18th, I believe it was.
Right. I think this is a different body than this. This body serves another. They serve on our Joint Powers Authority Board. They're our Housing Appeals Board. So, it's one thing to have somebody be terminated and then not be able to host a committee meeting. It's something different to not host a planning commission meeting. That translates to time and money for applicants and whatnot. And so I don't want to risk not having a quorum at a subsequent meeting because we haven't had adequate time to appoint someone and put that out. So that's why I think notice is necessary here. So we'll use there. I would like to strike the word unavoidably. I would like to, in the paragraph that begins the appointment of any member, it should say of any member of the commission who has been absent from 33% of the regular calendared meetings.
Got it.
Got that one? Okay, and then I think in that same paragraph, before the sentence that begins, the city clerk shall in turn notify, I think it should say the city clerk shall communicate in writing to any planning commissioner who has a recorded absence of that absence after each such occurrence. So each time they're absent, to let them know in writing, we registered you as absent. So there's no, this person cannot say later that they did not know. It can be a form letter that's 2 sentences. We recorded an absence for you.
Could we let them know via email?
Oh, I
fine.
routinely do my correspondence with everybody through email now, as long as
That's fine. I don't mind that. And
I
then-
should mention that I have also instructed all of the committees, and they're doing it, now that the rules have been adopted for everybody, it's on their agendas again for them to discuss at the meetings, and I have volunteered to go and speak to each of the groups to further clarify any of the rules that they don't understand. So this won't be sort of sprung on them unawares. They will be aware of the new rules.
And then I think
That helps.
Yeah, and then the other sentence I'd add after the one I just provided is, the city clerk shall provide notice to any planning commissioner for whom automatic termination would occur with a subsequent absence. And then city attorney, help me with the rest of it, that such absence would result in termination, I guess. Language akin to that, you're authorized, I think, to just put language.
And we'll be bringing this back for a second reading, so you get a
Okay.
chance to see that.
Yeah.
I need to have if you're going to adopt the first reading tonight, I need to have that language.
Can you read
nailed
that last sentence back then?
Sure. Sherry, did you catch
So
that?
this is what I have so far. So we agree on the first sentence, and I think we understand that. The second sentence would be, the city clerk shall provide notice to any planning commissioner whose termination will result from an additional subsequent absence.
Yeah.
Is that?
That's sufficient
That
for me.
capture what
Yeah,
you-
I think
okay.
the spirit is understood. Thank you for humoring that. I want to clean that up.
So, no, I'm lost as to where we are on the, we've had an amendment, a friendly amendment. Are we all good?
Oh, see?
Yeah, I'm good, because the city clerk's actual amount of work is not that much, and I think it is important. So I like all the changes.
Great.
Okay, so was there a motion?
Motion.
I would ask for a motion to read by title only, please.
Motion to read by title only.
I'll second that.
Moved by Councilmember Medina, seconded by Councilmember Pats, to read the ordinance by title only. Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Aye.
And Mayor Donahue.
Aye.
An ordinance of the City of Emeryville amending Section 2-3.309 of Article 3 of Title 2 of the Emeryville Municipal Code, vacancies.
Okay, now we need the regular motion, don't we?
Move as amended.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Bowders, seconded by Councilmember Medina to introduce the ordinance as amended. Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Aye.
And Mayor Donahue.
Aye. Okay, we have one action item, 12.1. Resolution of the City Council reaffirming the 2012 pedestrian and bicycle plan and adopting a focused update addendum on the implementation status.
Well, you just read my title. Mayor Donahue, council members. Yes, this is an reaffirmation of the existing pedestrian and bicycle plan and accepting an update that tells how much it's been implemented. And why we're doing this, to be eligible for funding from the state bicycle transportation account, cities have to update or reaffirm their bicycle plans every 5 years. And because of that, the Alameda County Transportation Commission requires the same thing for cities to be eligible for any of the funding that they distribute. And our pedestrian bicycle plan was adopted 5 years ago, so it's time. I wanted to quickly summarize. things that have been done since the plan was adopted. Looking at pedestrian and bike ped improvements, San Pablo crossing improvements have been completed. Benches have been placed at bus stops. Some sidewalks have been built. The Greenway south of Powell is coming together, along with sidewalks near Sherwin-Williams. 2 pedestrian bicycle bridges are in progress. And then in terms of, bicycle improvements, the Christie Ave bike path and 3 bike boulevards have been completed. And other bike improvements are in progress, including the Horton traffic calming trial and an improved Bay Trail segment. There are a few high priority projects in the plan that have not been started yet, and there are reasons for that. The creek feature on 53rd is not in the capital improvement program. The crosswalk on the north leg of the Powell Christie intersection has a 3-foot grade change. The mid-block crossing at Pack and Save on San Pablo, Caltrans says is not warranted. The path on Powell Street, on the back of the parking lot at Powell Street Plaza would require an easement. The path and straighter sidewalk on Powell Street would require property acquisition. Bike lanes to the I-80 bike ped bridge on Lacoste will require removing parking, so we'll wait till the bridge is built. And bike lanes on Peralta are waiting until Oakland builds theirs. The Pedestrian Bicycle Committee looked at this, and they recommended adoption of a resolution reaffirming the 2012 Pedestrian and Bicycle Plan and approving the addendum with the understanding that the committee will recommend updates to the plan within the next 6 months. And they talked about possible updates, reorganizing the priorities of the projects, looking at safety improvements at Powell Christie, which Public Works is working on doing, and bicycle lanes on San Pablo Avenue. The city is participating in a countywide corridor study on San Pablo Avenue, and they the RFP scope of work talked about having it be multimodal and serve all modes. Didn't say bike lanes, but it would serve all modes. And the Planning Commission recommended adoption of the resolution reaffirming the 2012 plan and approving the addendum. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
No questions. Thanks so much.
Okay, public comments on this item. Okay, seeing none. Any discussion?
I'm just going to take this opportunity because I forgot to mention it earlier, but I think this is a fitting place to mention that tomorrow we have a bike festival at the elementary school on the basketball court between 1:30 and 3:30 p.m. We're going to have bike mechanics, safety education, and a repair clinic. And as my child doesn't have a bicycle, he has requested that I bring his scooter so he can wheel around with his friends. And yeah, it's always a popular event.
I don't have a comment on this. Did you have something?
No.
Other than to say, I had a meeting with a member of the Bike Ped Advisory Committee at their request the other day, and they made an ask that I would like to share with council as potential direction to staff if council is interested. I'm supportive of it. We understand why we needed to put this updated addendum into place for the state purposes and whatnot, but they really wanted the opportunity to review and update it, and they're not real happy with the space they've been given to do that. And so I would like to propose, if people are supportive, that we instruct staff to have this plan updated and brought back to us by November of this year.
So I was at the BPAC meeting last night, and they really got in depth on this. And once it was brought up by staff and myself that there would be other projects that would be delayed by doing this plan right now, there was no consensus from the group to ask for that.
Okay, so my meeting was on Sunday, so if yours was yesterday, then...
And that yours was with an individual?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, is there a motion?
However, I do think that maybe in the next 6 months, then we should seriously look at what projects we would have delay.
Okay.
Do I have a motion on this action item?
No.
Okay.
It was like an expiring balloon.
I move to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Mayor Donahue, seconded by Councilmember Martinez. Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bowders?
Aye.
And Mayor Donahue.
Aye. Okay, communications and reports. Department heads.
Mayor Donahue and members of the City Council, I have my monthly report on the Planning Commission's recent actions. They had their meeting last Thursday, April 27th. The meeting included 2 study sessions on Sherwin-Williams, the final development plans that they are developing for that project. One was on the architectural design of the buildings, and the other was on the design of the public park and open spaces. There was presentations and discussion and a number of public comments, a lot of good comments made by both the commission and the public on both of those. The 6701 Shell Mound Residential Project extension request has been continued to a future date. At this point, we don't know what that future date will be. It depends on their ability to get the site cleaned up. And
I have a question about that.
Yes.
Does that give us another option about they're coming to us with a request? Is that right?
Correct.
To give them an extension, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And so that will, when does the council expect to get that request?
That won't be coming to the City Council.
I mean, it only goes to the Planning Commission.
Right. The original entitlement was granted by the Planning Commission, so the extension request goes to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
If it had been approved by the City Council, then the extension request would come to you.
Is it appealable?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's appealable, and the Planning Commission can modify the conditions of approval when they make an extension, when they approve an extension also.
And when is the likely date of that coming forward?
I don't know.
Okay.
It all depends on Mr. Nady and his ability to get his site cleaned up.
Yeah, rather than ask when it's coming forward, the current, like, when's the deadline for them to apply for the extension?
They've already applied for it.
Oh.
The deadline was prior to its expiration, which was in March, and they applied for the extension in February, I think.
Do we have to take action in a certain amount of time?
No.
Oh.
The only real absolute drop-dead date is 3 years after the original approval. The entitlement dies unless a building permit application is submitted by then.
Okay.
So if nothing happens by March of 2019, then they have to start over again.
Okay, thank you.
The final item on the commission's agenda was a public market directional sign program. I should note here that Commissioner Kang was absent from the meeting, and Commissioner Keller was recused on this item. Commissioner Donaldson was recused on the 2 Sherwin-Williams study session items. So we had 5 commissioners for the 2 study sessions and 5 commissioners for the directional sign program. That application was approved unanimously, 5-0, with a additional condition that they add an arrow to one of the signs. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to respond to any further questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Council members reporting on meetings attended.
I just want to throw out there that next week I have 2 meetings at the same time. I have the Housing Authority meeting in Hayward and the Committee on Aging. Make sure I get that name right. The Commission, thank you. And so I will not be attending the Commission on Aging, and I'm realizing this may be an ongoing thing. So I'm going to look to maybe agendize this for the future so we can talk about maybe changing that up.
Okay.
So maybe trading with another committee. So
maybe they'll move to a different Wednesday.
I'm fine with either way, but I'm just going to throw that out there. I just noticed that on the calendar this month. That'll be an ongoing conflict.
I report on 2 meetings. I spoke earlier this evening. I attended the county joint special meeting on health and social services last week. I also met over the weekend. AC Transit is holding 4 public stakeholder meetings about express Transbay bus services. And I attended the public meeting in Oakland, and I met with the government relations staff for AC Transit, Bobby Lee from the Emeryville was also at that meeting, and we talked to them and their planning staff about bringing express Trans-Bay direct service buses from Emeryville straight to the Trans-Bay Center, which, for lack of whatever the term is, the magic bridge that will come off of the Bay Bridge and go straight into the Trans-Bay Center next year and help them avoid all the street traffic they deal with. They are bringing double-decker buses back. MCI, the company that makes them, is bringing them back, double-doored, double-entry, double-decker buses for Trans-Bay services. And one of the things I just want to put on council's radar is there's going to be a outreach to public agencies like the city to discuss our interest in this. And I just want to give you a heads up that they're going to look at a secondary level at how to potentially amend local routes to accommodate hubs that will service Trans-Bay buses. So we could bring potentially better bus service to Emeryville by having a Trans-Bay service that's nonstop from somewhere in Emeryville to somewhere or the Trans-Bay Center. So just an initial conversation and outreach to let them know that the city is very interested in transit services, and I've asked them to prepare in their timeline a time to come and reach out to all of you. So.
Any other reports?
Nope.
Okay, future agenda item requests.
I have one request. I'm interested in bringing forward a study session to discuss revenue streams for cannabis businesses, from cannabis businesses to the city. So fees, taxes, what the city might be able to look forward to as we invite these businesses into our town. So if my colleagues will acquiesce, I think it's a smart thing to do now, so we will be prepared when permitting starts to happen in January of 2018. It's not necessarily putting the cart ahead of the horse. For instance, Hayward put a ballot measure on and got their voters to agree to up to 15% in taxes while they were still exploring the idea of lifting their ban on cannabis. So I think this is a good time to start just testing the waters, seeing what the possibilities are, and if you all agree, I would like to ask staff to involve our lobbyist, Townsend, in this endeavor, because I know that they're very close to these issues in Sacramento.
Thank you so much for your leadership, Councilmember Martinez. I very strongly support what you're asking to do.
Yeah.
So I think I've got at least 3 yes. Okay, I've got all the yeses. So I'm wondering from staff when this might be able to happen. You can come back with that.
Yeah, if we could, let us take a look at our scheduling for future council meetings, in the weeks and months ahead, and then let us report back to you at your next meeting as to when we can schedule for that.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Seeing nothing else, this meeting's adjourned.
9:30. Thank you, Mayor.